Chapter 3658. Lisa. Hearing him call her name, Lisa quieted down and frowned. She didn't know if this guy was really asleep or just pretending to be asleep. She leaned closer to him suspiciously and heard Xiaoyi-Chen mumbling in his sleep. "Come home with me?" Lisa's pupils dilated slightly. She looked at little Yi-Chen in a daze. The words that came out of his mouth were indistinct, but every word made her heart beat wildly. "Let's go home together." As Xiaoyi-Chen mumbled in his sleep, he held her hand tightly as if it was a precious treasure. Lisa actually forgot to retract her hand. Only after a long time had passed did she suddenly wake up. She immediately pulled her hand back, only to feel that it was burning hot. It was as if she had been soaked in lava. Lisa's heart was in a mess. She turned around abruptly and left the room without looking at Xiaoyi-Chen again. Growing up, she had seen many deaths. She had been reborn from the blood clots of death. She had stepped on countless corpses of her companions to survive until now. She had never dreamed of having a family. However, this guy was now saying to her, "Lisa, let's go home together." Her heart was beating wildly all of a sudden. Lisa returned to the cockpit. The yacht was on autopilot. She canceled the autopilot and started to control the yacht according to the route. According to the schedule, she was supposed to wake Yi-Chen up. However, seeing that he was sleeping so soundly, she didn't have the heart to wake him up. Let him sleep for a while more. She could still hold on for one more night. Lisa looked at the sea quietly. However, at this moment her heart was like the calm sea. Underneath the surface, there were turbulent waves. When Xiaoyi-Chen woke up, he sat up on the bed and looked out the window. The sky was already turning bright. It was already dawn. It was already dawn. He was a little stunned. Was it already the next morning? Why didn't Lisa wake him up? What happened? Burning with anxiety, he got out of bed and rushed to the cockpit with his messy hair. However, he saw Lisa sitting on the side. The yacht was on autopilot. She was drinking milk and eating hardtack. When she heard footsteps, she turned around and was surprised to see Yi-Chen walking out with his messy hair. "You're awake? Why didn't you wake me up?" "Oh, I saw that you were sleeping so soundly that I couldn't wake you up no matter how hard I tried, so I just didn't bother." As Lisa spoke, she took another bite of the hardtack. The hardtack was very hard, and when he bit into it, crunching sounds could be heard. Xiaoyi-Chen looked at the dashboard and clicked on the yacht's autopilot mode. Lisa explained, "The yacht is set to autopilot mode, but someone has to guard it to prevent any accidents." He ruffled his hair in frustration and said to Lisa, "Go and rest." "Okay, wait for me to finish eating." Lisa finished her hardtack and stood up. She said to him, "I'm going to sleep. Wake me up in the evening." Xiaoyi-Chen immediately said, "I won't wake you up. You can sleep a little longer." "It's okay." Lisa turned around and smiled at him. "My biological clock is very punctual. I'll wake up on my own at that time." With that, she left the cockpit. Xiaoyi-Chen was still stunned on the spot. Lisa rarely smiled. However, she had just smiled at him. Chapter 3659. Xiaoyi-Chen remained rooted to the ground. Lisa rarely smiled. However, she had smiled at him just now. Xiaoyi-Chen's heart thumped wildly. He pretended to be calm as he sat in his seat. He was still in a daze. So Lisa's smile was so beautiful. While Xiaoyi-Chen was still in a daze, the door opened again. Lisa stood at the door. Seeing him in a daze, she frowned and asked, "Are you still asleep?" "No." Xiaoyi-Chen immediately explained. I'm thinking about something." After a pause, he asked in confusion, "Do you have any other instructions?" "I've already contacted Master Jie through the radio. He said that he would send people to the nearest port to receive us as soon as possible." As Lisa spoke, she pointed at the blinking red on the dashboard and said, "I've turned on the radar coordinates. Remember, don't touch that green button." The radar coordinates would constantly send signals to Gong Jie's system, so that they could be located in time. Xiaoyi-Chen nodded. "Okay, don't worry. I won't touch it." "Okay." Lisa looked at him deeply. Without saying anything else, she turned around and closed the door. Xiaoyi-Chen stood by the dashboard. Thinking back to the smile Lisa had shown him just now, he smiled contentedly. "Lisa." She smiled at him. Xiaoyi-Chen took out an energy biscuit and a bottle of milk from the food storage box. He opened the packaging and took a bite. The biscuit had been compressed. Even though it was a small biscuit, it could replenish 10 times the energy of a normal biscuit and give him a strong sense of fullness. He drank a mouthful of milk and thought back to his dream. In his dream, he had brought Lisa home and lived a normal life. He had actually smiled foolishly. What? Xiaojie, is what you said true? In the living room, Yun Shishir's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe it. Gongjie nodded. He glanced at Muyaja and said with certainty, Lisa just called me. She said that she and Xiaoichen have left Ashland Island and are now on a yacht. Lisa? Yun Shishir looked confused. Who is Lisa? Lisa is Yu Yu's bodyguard. She was the reason why we could successfully switch Yu Yu back. Yun Shishir nodded in understanding. I see. She thought for a moment and asked worriedly. Then how did they come back? Was there an escort? At this point, a worried look appeared on his face. No, they came back from Ashland Island alone. When Muyaja heard this, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. He asked worriedly, how could it be just the two of them? Isn't that very dangerous? There were too many uncertainties at sea. It was hard to imagine if the two of them could successfully and safely arrive on a yacht without anyone's help. Gongjie immediately comforted him. I may not believe others, but I definitely believe in Lisa. She's not an ordinary child. You can rest assured. Child? Lisa is a child. Yun Shishir became even more uneasy. 2 children. Gongjie, how can I rest assured with 2 children? What if something happens? His lips curled into a confident smile. Sis, trust me, okay? I've already sent people to help them. I'll be there as soon as possible to meet up with the 2 little guys. Chapter 3660. Lisa. Lisa. When Lisa woke up in a daze, she saw Xiaoichen's warm smile. She sat up nervously, leaned against the wall, and stared at him a little defensively. What are you doing? She looked out of the window and woke up. She rubbed her eyes and asked, Did you change the guard? No. Xiaoichen winked at her mysteriously. I caught something good. Lisa followed Xiaoichen to the deck. He took out a charcoal stove from somewhere and lit it up. Then he set up a barbed wire net. 2 huge fish lay on top of it. As the meat was cooked, it emitted a tempting aroma. Fish? Yes. I don't know what kind of fish it is, but I think the meat of the fish should be edible. Lisa frowned. Indeed, not only was the meat of the fish fresh and tender, but it was also suitable for grilling. However, some sea fishes were poisonous and inedible. Lisa walked over and identified it. She often sailed on the sea, so she recognized it at a glance. This is a salmon. Salmon? Xiaoichen didn't know what a salmon was. He was only concerned about one thing. Can it be eaten? Of course it can be eaten. Idiot. Lisa scolded him and sat down on the deck. She couldn't help but ask curiously, How did you catch this fish? I flipped over the fishing net and casually fished it out. He happened to encounter a school of fish on the calm surface of the sea and casually fished it out. Lisa looked at the various seasonings next to the stove and asked suspiciously, Where did these things come from? From the storage room. Xiaoichen smiled proudly. I wanted to check if there was anything in the storage room, but I smelled pepper. In the cabinet I found these seasonings and the barbed wire net. Since there are these things, there must be something to grill, right? I looked around again and found this stove in the corner. Lisa listened for a long time and only came to a realization. That was, the potential of a foodie was indeed limitless. However, it was all thanks to the little glutton Muichen that they were able to eat at sea. Lisa sat down and glanced at the fish. She quickly turned it over, otherwise it would have been burnt. Xiaoichen brushed the oil again. Just by smelling the fragrance he felt a little restless. Lisa complained, Why didn't you catch more fish when you encountered a school of fish? I caught a few, but the rest ran away. Xiaoichen said helplessly, I'm not a big fish. It's already a miracle that I was able to catch 2 of them. This size is considered small among the salmons. Xiaoichen did not have a way out. Moreover, if you fry the fish fillet, it will be more tender. You seem to have a lot of experience. Lisa raised her eyebrows and said, I didn't know about these tools. Otherwise, I would have caught a school of fish for you to see. Xiaoichen's self-esteem was inevitably hurt. He felt that Lisa was omnipotent. Lisa glanced at him and explained, "When I was training on the island, I often caught fish." "Oh." Xiaoichen glanced at her and suddenly said curiously, "Actually, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask." Huh. Chapter 3661. You said that you were born as an assassin and received a lot of cruel training. Are you the only one? Yes. Then. Xiaoichen hesitated. Don't you feel lonely if you're the only one? Lisa was taken aback and looked at him in surprise. This was the first time in her life that someone had asked her such a question. Lonely. Xiaoichen nodded and looked at her seriously. If you're alone, there's no one to talk to, no one to play with. Won't you feel lonely? As she said this, she couldn't help but recall that when they were young, Mu Yaja was busy. At that time, Mu Wanru was not close to him either. He liked to lock himself in his little world and talk to the toys, the walls, and even the air. He would imagine other people sitting in front of him and talking to themselves. He enjoyed himself. It was really lonely to be alone. When Lisa heard this, she frowned and remained silent for a long time. Just when Xiaoichen thought that she was going to avoid the question, she said in a low voice, "At that time, I didn't know what loneliness was. I only knew that I had to stay until the end. I was the only one who had a chance to survive." She turned her head and asked with the same seriousness, "Have you killed anyone before?" Xiaoichen's heart sank. He shook his head. I don't think so." "Oh." Lisa lowered her head and looked at the grilled fish on the barbed wire fence. She said calmly, "I killed someone who I used to think of as my best friend with my own hands." She had never mentioned this to anyone before. Lisa stared at the sizzling fish, but her tone was calm. "At that time, there were only 2 children and me left in the base camp. We were locked in the same cage. I told him that even if we were to die together, I wouldn't do anything to him. He said the same thing to me. At that time, only 1 out of 100 children had the chance to walk out of the cage. When there were only 10 children left, the other 8 children did not dare to do anything to her. Hence, they were prepared to kill the boy. She finally stood up, picked up the knife and killed the 8 children. She walked to him covered in blood, sat down and said to him, 'Only one child can walk out of here. Either you die or I die. But I won't kill you. What about you? Will you kill me?' The boy shook his head firmly and said, 'I won't.' Then, Lisa held his hand and smiled at him. 'Even if we die together, don't betray me, okay?' The boy smiled back at her. That night she slept very lightly. She only felt a black shadow walking to her side. Even with her eyes closed, she could feel the dazzling light of the dagger under the moonlight. She opened her eyes and almost subconsciously flipped her hand over to pin the person under her. When she saw his face clearly, she fell to the wall in disappointment. It was him. They had clearly agreed that even if they were to die together, they would not betray each other. However, he chose to betray him and decided to make a move on her in her sleep. The boy nervously held the dagger and stood up, trembling all over. Tears and snot flowed down his face. "I had no choice. I had no choice. I didn't want to kill you, but I didn't want to die even more." Oh. Chapter 3662. Lisa narrowed her eyes and pulled out a sharp dagger from her waist belt. She swung it at the nearest person. Ah! Bang bang bang. Gunshots rang out in the basement. However, in less than 10 seconds, the basement returned to its usual deathly silence. The other crew members crept into the storeroom. They were very vigilant as they hugged their guns. When they broke through the door earlier, they kept their guns at a distance and scanned every corner with vigilance. As soon as they entered the room, the fishy smell on their bodies, as well as the sour smell of having drifted on the sea for a month without bathing, immediately filled the air. Seeing that there was no one in the storeroom, the group of people put away their guns and began rummaging through the cabinets. The pirates were here for the treasure. Seeing that there was no one on the ship, their first reaction was probably to escape on a small speedboat. Therefore, they quickly searched for any valuables left on the yacht. The door of the cabinet suddenly opened. Everyone immediately became alert. Before they could raise their guns, an unknown grenade was suddenly thrown out. The group of people looked at each other and glanced at each other curiously. However, the flash grenade exploded all of a sudden. Poof! In such a small room, the flash grenade exploded all of a sudden. The strong sense of dazzling light blinded everyone's eyes. Shit! It's a grenade! While the group of people were wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves, Mui-chen, who was wearing a pair of goggles, flipped out of the cabinet with an M4A1. He knelt on one knee and fired a series of shots at the crowd. Da-da-da! In an instant, a large number of corpses fell on the floor. Mui-chen stood up and walked over. He examined the corpses one by one. Those who were still moving their eyeballs were shot directly in between their eyebrows. The other people in the cabins on the second floor heard the gunshots from the storeroom on the first floor. They looked at each other and immediately rushed to the storeroom. They waved the smoke away and walked in to take a look. There was a river of blood. What's going on? The group of people obviously did not expect such an unforeseen event. Just as they were panicking, the ceiling of the storage room was suddenly pulled open, and a Gatling gun poked in. Lisa crouched on top of the roof and aimed her Gatling gun at the cabin. She fired at the cabin. Da-da-da-da. A few minutes later, the world returned to silence. After meeting with Xiaoyi-chen, Lisa carefully stepped into the room. She held the dagger in her hand and examined the corpse on the floor. At that moment, the smell of blood in the room was extremely thick. The two of them looked at each other. After confirming that all the pirates had been killed, Lisa and Xiaoyi-chen put away their daggers and left the cabin, locking the door behind them. At night, Xiaoyi-chen and Lisa dragged all the corpses to the deck. After making sure that there was no one left behind, they threw the corpses into the sea. Lisa wore a diving suit and dived into the sea. After cleaning up all the corpses on the propeller, Lisa climbed onto the yacht and gestured to the cockpit. Xiaoyi-chen pushed the starting lever, and the propeller was successfully restored. She then heaved a sigh of relief. Using the radio, Lisa sent out a distress signal. Looking at the route map, she saw that the storm was still ongoing. She had a headache and held her forehead. I wonder when the storm will pass. Chapter 3663. Lisa shook her head. No, I won't. Not all of the corpses of the pirates were thrown into the sea. One of them was left hanging by the railing as a warning to the pirates that if they dared to block the way, they would definitely die. Just as Xiaoyi-chen was in a daze, he suddenly heard a sound. Upon hearing the sound, Lisa immediately sat up and threw herself in front of the screen. She took a look and exclaimed in surprise. Someone responded to my radio. There's a ship not far from us. You sent a radio just now. Were you asking for help? Yes. But with our fuel, food, and drinking water, we should be able to last until we reach our destination. Lisa turned around and suddenly asked, Then have you considered whether our small yacht will have enough emergency equipment if we encounter a storm on such a big sea? Xiaoyi-chen was suddenly speechless. Moreover, there are only two of us. Our abilities are limited. Even though we have enough fuel and food and water, if we encounter another storm on the sea, the fuel will be depleted very quickly and we may not have enough. Also, the yacht's speed is limited. Xiaoyi-chen nodded. Okay, I understand. I'll listen to you. Okay. Lisa immediately sent a distress signal to a passing ship. The other party replied that they were willing to help. Lisa's confidence was greatly boosted. After confirming the location of the radar, she steered the yacht closer to the ship. For the past few hours they had been on high alert and did not relax at all. Hence, it was inevitable that they were a little tired. Mui-chen in particular was exhausted. Lisa immediately urged him, Go and sleep for a while. I'll keep watch. Xiaoyi-chen asked worriedly, Aren't you tired? I'm tired, but I can hold on. Lisa smiled. Don't worry, I can hold on. You, on the other hand, should get some rest. Who knows, you might take over after a short nap. Okay. Xiaoyi-chen didn't waste any time, but he didn't return to his room. Instead, he laid down in the cockpit, leaned against the wall, hugged his arms, and fell asleep very quickly. When he woke up again, he was shaken awake by Lisa. Mui-chen, wake up. He opened his eyes in a daze and saw Lisa's nervous expression. What's wrong? He sat up warily, thinking that something had happened again. Lisa said to him, Do you still remember the ship that we sent a distress signal to? Right now, he's about 1,000 meters away from us. But Lisa, on the other hand, began to hesitate. Mui-chin saw her cold expression and could not help but worry. What's wrong? Is there a problem? That's the Gu family's cargo ship. Oh. Xiaoyi-chin was stunned. There was no deep hatred between the Mu family and the Gu family. However, Lisa did. Previously, her subordinates had killed all the men that Gu Jinglian had brought to North Africa. There were so many blood debts. Now they had bumped into each other head-on. She didn't dare to board the ship. Xiaoyi-chin took the binoculars from her and looked in the direction that Lisa was pointing at. Indeed, it was a huge cargo ship. The ship's bow was engraved with a huge Werther symbol. That was the Gu family's factory in North Africa. Chapter 3664. There's no room for hesitation. Mui-chin said. Although Gu Jinglian is ruthless, he will never lay a hand on children. Lisa was a little skeptical. Are you sure? Mui-chin patted his chest and assured her. Yes, I'm sure. He still believed in Gu Jinglian's character. He would never make things difficult for the two children. Half an hour later, Lisa regretted her decision. After boarding the boat, Gu Jinglian saw Mui-chin and Lisa. Without a word, he ordered his men to handcuff the two of them and tie them to the pillar of the boat. Gu Jinglian stood in front of them condescendingly. His cold gaze swept over every inch of their bodies, as though they were being dismembered. Lisa asked angrily, "Didn't you say that Gu Jinglian wouldn't lay a hand on children?" Mui-chin was so embarrassed that the corners of his lips twitched violently. Gu Jinglian was wearing a black uniform. When he heard Lisa's words, he squatted down calmly and sized them up expressionlessly. Oh? Who was the one who said that I wouldn't make things difficult for children? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly raised his wrist. In his hand was a desert eagle. He aimed it between Mui-chin's eyebrows. Gong Fan, what goes around comes around. I didn't expect that you would fall into my hands. When Mui-chin heard this, he shuddered. He hurriedly said, Young Master Gu, you've misunderstood. My name is Mui-chin, not Yu. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he raised his eyebrows but did not think much of it. What makes you think that I'll believe you? Yu and I are twins. The two of us look very similar, but there are definitely differences. For example, I'm a little taller, a little more skilled, and a little smarter. Yu is a little more stupid, a little more eccentric, and a little more annoying. Lisa rolled her eyes at Mui-chin. At the critical moment, he really didn't feel guilty about selling out his own brother. You scammed me just like that. He was a maniac who cheated his brother. Mui-chin seemed to have guessed what she was thinking. He turned his head and said angrily, That's right. Why should you pay for his debt? Gu Jinglian thought that this little guy was a little interesting. He didn't really want to kill the two children. Just as Mui-chin had said, no matter how ruthless Gu Jinglian was, he would not lay his hands on the two children. This was not his style of doing things. However, he had been so miserably tricked by the hurricane in North Africa that he could not let this matter rest. Furthermore, Gu Jinglian really thought that Mui-chin was Yun Tianyu, so he wanted to tease him. Seeing Gu Jinglian's cold gaze on him, Mui-chin immediately said, Master Gu, are you sure you want to kill us? My daddy is not to be trifled with. If you dare to do anything and something happens to me, my daddy will be very angry. My mommy will also fight it out with you. Gu Jinglian could not help but ask coldly, You said that you're good at fighting. Let's have a spar. If you're really that good, I'll let you off and bring you back to the capital safe and sound. What do you think? Spar with you? Gu Jinglian smiled gracefully. I don't fight. Xiaoyi-chen. Lisa could not help asking, Who will you spar with then? Gu Jinglian stood up and snapped his fingers. Kanji. Chapter 3665. Xiaoyi-chen gulped. To be honest, if he were to fight with such a big guy, would his head be smashed into pieces with a single punch? Gu Jinglian smiled. If you admit defeat, I'll throw you both back into the sea. Lisa immediately said, I'll fight him. Gu Jinglian smiled and said, If you fight, it'll be considered as admitting defeat. He was well aware of Lisa's capabilities. Even though she was small in stature, she would definitely have the upper hand against Han Ji. However, this was Mui-chin. He had long heard that Muyaja had two sons. Among them, the eldest was the most skilled. He would like to experience it for himself. After a pause, he turned to look at Mui-chin and said meaningfully, As a man, surely you wouldn't let your girl fight, right? Lisa's face turned red when she heard this. She stammered. What are you talking about? Who's his girl? Xiaoqian said disdainfully. Do you think I'm afraid? Untie me and I'll fight him. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he couldn't help but look at him in a different light. He gestured with his eyes and his subordinate immediately walked over to untie Muichen. Muichen stood up and moved his wrists and restraints a little before he got into a fighting stance. Lisa saw this and said worriedly, Muichen, don't force yourself. I'll be fine, don't worry. Muichen snorted coldly and turned to look at Han Ji. He gestured provocatively at him with his finger and said, Go ahead. Han Ji saluted with his fists clenched. When he clenched his fists, his sandbag-sized fists immediately produced a crisp and powerful sound. Xiaoqian didn't back down at all. He got into a fighting stance. His stance was a standard fighting stance. Gu Jinglian retreated to one side. With a cigarette in his mouth, he watched the fight coldly. Ha! Han Ji hollered, raised his fist, and pounced on Muichen like a wolf. His 1.95-meter-tall figure was like Mount Tai as he leaned over. Like a ghost, Little Chen nimbly dodged the attack and appeared behind him. With a leap he aimed a horizontal kick at the man's ribs. With his back facing Xiaoqian, Han Ji grabbed onto his leg tightly. Xiaoqian was shocked. He wanted to break free, but there was no chance for him to do so. In a flash, he bounced up from the ground and swept his other leg towards Han Ji's face like a whirlwind. Bang! A kick. Xiaoqian's flying kick landed squarely on Han Ji's face, and he couldn't help but stumble back a few meters. Xiaoqian nimbly landed on the ground, but his left knee went soft. He immediately realized that Han Ji had used too much strength to hold on to him, and that his ankle was cramping. Without sufficient exercise, it was indeed a bit difficult to face them head-on. Han Ji was also pushed back a few steps. He didn't expect the little guy, who was only waist-high, to have such explosive strength. His jaw almost dislocated. Han Ji spat out a mouthful of blood. His teeth were obviously loosened. He wiped away the traces of blood at the corner of his mouth and got into a fighting stance again. You're not bad either, Muichen said with a smile. His words were undoubtedly a form of provocation. Han Ji smiled and taunted back. Little guy, you're not bad. Xiaoqian didn't humbly admit defeat. He said coldly, it's not too late to admit defeat now. Chapter 3666. As Han Ji spoke, he clenched his fists tightly and glared at Xiaoqian. His eyes were like those of a venomous snake. Xiaoqian lightly scratched the tip of his nose and charged at him. The two of them exchanged punches with each other. Their fists were not to be trifled with. They were solid fists. When their fists landed on the wall almost cracked and a layer of dust fell off. However, the most shocking thing was that Xiaoqian did not show any signs of weakness. Instead, he seemed to be getting more and more courageous. He kept throwing punches at Han Ji's vital points. Compared to Han Ji, although he was slimmer, he had the advantage in terms of agility. He was as nimble as a cat. Gradually, Muichen understood what was going on. He could not use too many fancy moves against Han Ji. Hence, he gave up on horizontal kicks, flying kicks, and high kicks. Regardless of whether he threw punches or kicks, he relied on his brute strength. Xiaoqian's strength was far beyond Han Ji's expectations. Who would have thought that a mere child would actually have such great capabilities? Han Ji was not soft either. He threw a punch at Xiaoqian's shoulder. Xiaoqian did not dodge. Instead, he clenched his fist and met Han Ji's fist head-on. The two of them clashed and separated. Xiaoqian and Han Ji both took a few steps back. Their faces showed signs of pain. At that moment, Lisa's heart trembled. She looked anxiously at Xiaoqian. She saw that the bones in Xiaoqian's fist were slightly red. Then, she looked at Han Ji's hand and saw that a few bones had been broken. Lisa turned pale with fright. Han Ji's fist was as big as a red bean bun. In the end, he did not expect that little Chen would take his punch head-on and even break his bones. Lisa suddenly felt that Xiaoqian's strength was too frightening. He had hidden his strength well. Perhaps in terms of skill she was slightly better than Xiaoqian, but in terms of strength there was a huge difference. Han Ji's fighting skills weren't too complicated, but each of his punches and kicks were very solid. However, Neither Hanji nor Gu Jinglian expected that Xiaoqin's tiny body would contain such immense power. Unbelievable. Hanji's hand was injured and a few of his bones were broken, but he didn't care. He stood up and prepared to continue fighting. Gu Jinglian suddenly said, "Stand down." "Young Master Gu." Hanji looked nervously at Gu Jinglian, only to see him sizing up Muichen with admiration. Hanji immediately emphasized, "I haven't lost yet." Losing to a child was a great humiliation. Hanji refused to admit that he had lost to Xiaoqian. Gu Jinglian said coldly, "According to the rules, you've already lost. Getting injured meant losing. Moreover, Xiaoqian was still a child." Gu Jinglian knew in his heart that after such a contest, if he hadn't stopped the fight, Hanji would have been beaten to a pulp by Xiaoqian. Forget it. The contest would end here. Gu Jinglian walked in front of Muichen and smiled. "Muichen, you've really opened my eyes." Xiaoqian looked up at him and asked curiously, "Did I win?" "Yes, you won." "Then since I won, you can't go back on your promise." Gu Jinglian said disdainfully, "I never go back on my words." Chapter 36-67. He cut the ropes and unlocked the handcuffs at the same time. Lisa regained her freedom and immediately walked over to Xiaoqian. She asked worriedly, "Are you okay?" "I?" Xiaoqian looked at Lisa and saw that she was pretending to be calm, but she could not hide the anxiety in her eyes. His heart warmed and he immediately smiled. "Yeah, I'm fine." She was worried about him. He did not expect that Lisa, who was usually so cold, would take the initiative to show concern for others. "That big guy hit you so hard. Are you sure you're okay?" Lisa was in disbelief. Hanji had punched him so many times. Did he not feel any pain or itch? She had seen Hanji punch Xiaoqian's back and abdomen a few times. The force of those punches was enough to break a steel plate, let alone a human body. Xiaoqian was a mortal after all. Lisa did not believe that he was completely fine. "I'm really fine. Don't worry, I won't force myself." The little guy smiled warmly. So, Lisa was skeptical, but she still had some doubts. "Even if your bones weren't broken and your organs weren't damaged, I don't believe that you don't have any bruises after being hit by such a heavy punch." Xiaoqian calmly lifted his shirt and revealed his muscular abdomen. Lisa took a look and was surprised to find that there was not a single bruise. It was too amazing. Lisa's eyes were filled with shock. How could this be? "I learned Chinese martial arts." Ancient martial arts were Chinese martial arts, and Chinese martial arts was also a term used to refer to martial arts. However, in the current traditional sense, Chinese martial arts and martial arts were very different. Martial arts practitioners strengthened the body, while Chinese martial arts practitioners protected the family and defended the country. The so-called Chinese martial arts were martial arts that only killed the enemy and did not perform. For example, Tai Chi was one of the Chinese martial arts. However, Tai Chi had been prejudiced by many people. They thought that Tai Chi could be practiced by any ordinary person. Other than strengthening the body, it had no other use. Now, Tai Chi had become a form of performance. However, the martial arts of Tai Chi did not have so many mysterious and strange moves. His attacks were nothing more than fast, accurate, and ruthless. If he could kill in one move, he would never use two. Taking someone's life was only a matter of a snap of a finger. His leg and hand strength came from practicing the horse stance. The horse stance was the foundation of many sections. The horse stance of each sect was similar, but there were differences. There were only two purposes for practicing the horse stance. One was to train the strength of the legs, and the other was to train internal energy, which was the so-called gathering of qi. Therefore, although the horse stance seemed simple, it was one of the most basic skills in martial arts. In Chinese martial arts there was a saying, "Start by standing in the stance for 3 years." If one did not practice martial arts, it would be for naught. If one only had a set of moves without a solid foundation, it would only be for show and not practical. Xiaoqian had a master when he was 3 years old and practiced the horse stance every day. In the beginning, he found it boring and thought that the horse stance was too easy. However, the horse stance became more and more difficult with each passing day. Later on, when little Li Chen was in the horse stance, his master magically placed a basin of charcoal under his crotch. Following that, he took 2 hanging stones from the side, each weighing about 5 kilograms, and hung them on his arms just like that. Whenever he moved, his clothes would be set on fire. Chapter 3668. He had to maintain this stance for the time it takes to burn a joss stick. The time it takes to burn a joss stick. He had to maintain this posture for the entire time it takes to burn a joss stick. Xiao Chen's expression was bitter and vengeful. Would he still be alive after he was done? Furthermore, there was another rule. The stone was not allowed to fall to the ground. If it did, he would be punished for the time it takes to burn a joss stick. The stone was only a finger's length away from the ground. If he let his guard down, he would collide with the ground. Hence, Xiao Chen spent the time it takes to burn 4 joss sticks on the first day. That night, he could not even walk smoothly. With this kind of training, coupled with Xiao Chen's extraordinary talent, his strength was unparalleled even though he was not tall. Mu Yaja sometimes suspected that his son had extraordinary strength. If the car broke down when they went out to play, this guy would probably be able to lift the car with his bare hands even without a jack. Lisa heard this and was so shocked that she could not close her mouth. However, even though Xiao Chen had said so, Lisa was still worried. She grabbed his hand and reached out to touch Xiao Chen's abdomen gently. These were the places where Han Ji had hit him just now. She felt around and confirmed that the 2 punches didn't hurt any of his organs or bones. It was the luckiest of the luckiest. However, Xiao Chen was so embarrassed by her touch that he took a few steps back. Blushing, he looked at her. Why are you touching me? Seeing that his little face was completely red, Lisa explained in a speechless manner. I'm checking your body to see if there's anything wrong with it. Xiao Chen's face turned even redder. He said awkwardly, you should be wondering if his hand was broken when he punched me. It's fine. You don't have to worry about me. Lisa looked at him speechlessly. After a long silence, she suddenly said, I'm going to send a message to Master Jia. With that, she walked around him and left. Xiao Chen then realized that he had to contact his uncle as soon as possible and tell him that they were on the Gu family's boat. Gu Jinglian had promised him that he would bring them back to the capital safe and sound. According to Lisa, the speed of this cargo ship was twice as fast as the yacht. They would reach the capital in about 10 days. Meanwhile, when Gong Jie received the news that Xiao Chen and Lisa had boarded the rescue boat and were on their way back to the capital, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, when he heard that the 2 of them were on Gu Jinglian's boat, he was shocked. Gong Jie was utterly confused. The hurricane group had taken away the Gu family's land in North Africa. Now that they had met, could it be, Gu Jinglian must be making things difficult for these 2 little guys? Uncle, let me tell you, I've defeated a super strong big guy. This person is Gu Jinglian's very capable bodyguard. He lost to me. Xiao Chen was so proud of himself when he mentioned this. Gong Jie was not in the mood to listen to this. He was only happy to see that they were safe. Lisa said, we were hijacked by pirates not long ago. Hijacked? Yes, near the waters of Somalia. They boarded the boat? Yes. Then, Gong Jie asked worriedly, are you guys hurt? No. Lisa smiled coldly. Xiao Chen and I killed all the people who boarded the boat. Not a single one was left. Gong Jie. Why did he feel a chill down his spine and a chill run down his spine? Chapter 3669. Xiao Chen had spent the past few days on the cruise ship counting on his fingers. He wholeheartedly hoped that the day he could reunite with his family would come soon. He really missed home. Lisa knew that Xiao Chen missed home all the time, especially when he was under hypnosis and the hypnosis had failed. How strong must his willpower have been to resist such a terrifying hypnosis technique? Xiao Chen had done what you couldn't. She couldn't help but look at him in a different light. After 2 weeks of sailing, they finally reached home. When Xiao Chen found out that they would reach the harbor in the capital the next morning, he was over the moon. That night he couldn't sleep. He didn't know how long he had been away from home. He also didn't know if Yu had gotten along well with Mommy and Daddy, and if he had regained his memory after returning to the Mu family. In the middle of the night, Lisa woke up to find that the bed next to hers was empty. Xiao Chen wasn't there. She got up and went to the deck. She saw Xiao Chen leaning against the railing and looking out at the horizon. The harbor in the capital was on the other side. That was the direction of his home. His home. Xiaoyi-Chen kept looking in that direction. Lisa walked over and teased him. What's wrong? You're so excited that you can't sleep because you're going home? Xiaoyi-Chen didn't answer. Instead, he said in a trembling voice, Lisa, do you know? In 6 hours, I'll be able to see Mommy. Lisa suddenly fell silent. It's not just Mommy. There's also Daddy Yu Yao. A blissful smile appeared on Xiaoyi-Chen's face as he spoke. Lisa was affected by his emotions and smiled from the bottom of her heart. Are you that homesick? Yes. Lisa also put her arm on the railing and asked curiously, Mui-Chen, what does it feel like to have a home? Mui-Chen was a little surprised that Lisa would ask such a question. To the Lisa of the past, this question was incomparably childish. But now, she actually took the initiative to ask. He was a little curious, but he was also seriously considering how to answer this question. I can't describe it, but it feels very warm. Warmth? Lisa could not help but laugh. It was a vague answer. Xiaoyi-Chen said, I love it when Mommy reads me bedtime stories. I love lying in her arms and listening to her gentle voice. My mommy's voice is the best voice in the world. Listening to her voice, I was able to fall asleep peacefully. Speaking of which, I can't remember all the stories she told me, but I really like that feeling. I never had any nightmares again when I listened to her voice while I slept. Lisa was a little entranced as she listened. When Xiaoyi-Chen suddenly stopped, she asked curiously, What else? Also, Xiaoyi-Chen smiled and said, Every time I made a mistake or you pushed the blame to me, you know that. Yu is my younger brother, so I have to give in to him. But even if Mommy is angry, she won't be fierce to me. If she's really sad, she'll definitely be so angry that she'll cry. I'm so afraid of seeing her sad, so I keep telling myself that I can't make her cry. Otherwise, I'll be committing a huge sin. Okay. Also, my daddy warned me before. Chapter 3670. Ha 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 ha. Lisa was amused by his animated expression. Your daddy is so adorable. My daddy? Him. He's alright. In Xiaoyi-Chen's mind, Muyaja was not adorable at all. It was too scary to use the word adorable to describe him. My daddy is very fierce. When I was young, I was afraid of him. He always had a serious expression on his face and didn't smile much. At that time, I wondered how there could be such a difficult person in the world. After pausing for a moment, Xiaoyi-Chen suddenly smiled and continued. Later on, I understood that it wasn't that he didn't love me, he just didn't know how to express it. After he got together with Mommy, he gradually learned how to get along with me. As Lisa listened, she gently yawned. Lisa, to be honest, I feel that it's such a pity. A pity. Xiaoyi-Chen turned around and gazed deeply at her. When you were born, there was only killing in your world. Without Daddy to hug you and Mommy to dote on you, you even missed out on your childhood. Don't you feel lonely without a childhood? Little Chen lamented. If you had a mommy like me, who reads you bedtime stories, dresses you in pretty dresses, and dotes on you like the apple of her eye, you'd surely be blissful. Lisa's expression was slightly startled. Xiaoyi-Chen also realized that his words might have hurt her. His expression darkened and he said, Sorry. Did I say something I shouldn't have? Lisa, however, turned to smile. No. There was a long silence between the two children. Lisa suddenly sighed and said, It's just that you seem to have said something wrong. Lisa looked up at Xiaoyi-Chen and said slowly, How can I miss out on something that I've never had? Xiaoyi-Chen was stunned. For a moment he was speechless. I've never had that thing, so you said that I missed out on it and felt that it was a pity. However, I don't feel that way. It's just that. She was just a little envious after hearing Xiaoyi-Chen say so much. Just as Xiaoyi-Chen had said, if she had a mother like you and Xiaoyi-Chen, she would definitely be very happy. Just because you didn't have it in the past doesn't mean you won't in the future. Xiaoyi-Chen immediately patted his chest and said, From now on, my home is your home. My mommy is your mommy, and my daddy is your daddy. Really? Lisa asked jokingly. Will your wife be my wife from now on? Xiaoyi-Chen immediately blushed and snapped. You don't even like women. In any case, since you've said so, from now on what's yours is mine. We've already agreed. Lisa stuck out her little finger and asked curiously, I heard that you guys make such promises. This is called a retractor. Yes, pinky swear. Lisa cleared her throat and said, "You have to promise me." Xiaoqian laughed and looked at her. He shook his head and said, "Okay, I'll pinky swear with you." He stuck out his little finger and hooked it with hers. Pinky swear. Okay, pinky swear. The night breeze was getting stronger. Lisa went back to bed and pulled the blanket over her. She didn't know why, but she had new expectations for tomorrow. "Lisa, wake up." Lisa slowly woke up from her dream. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Xiaoqian's excited expression. "We're here. We're almost at the harbor." Chapter 3671. We're here, we're here. Mommy said that she's already waiting for us at the harbor. Oh. Lisa, hurry up and put on your clothes. Xiaoqian brought some clothes for Lisa. Lisa yawned as she put on her clothes. She followed Xiaoqian to the deck. However, even though they could already see the harbor, it was still quite a distance away. She was a little upset and glared at Xiaoqian. Just as she was about to scold him, she saw that he was staring at the harbor from afar, as though he wished that he could grow wings and fly over there. "I saw my mommy," Xiaoqian said excitedly. Lisa's lips twitched violently. "So far away. How did you see it?" "I think I saw it already." Xiaoqian stared at the harbor anxiously. Lisa's heart ached for him and she gently held his hand. Little Chen was completely unaware of it as he subconsciously held her little hand tightly. Lisa's heart skipped a beat. She followed Xiaoqian's line of sight. However, from her perspective, the harbor was still very far away. Half an hour later, the ship finally docked at the harbor. Mu Yaja and Yun Shirshir arrived at dawn. As they did not know when the ship would dock, they decided to come earlier. Yun Shirshir saw Xiaoqian waving at her from the ship. She was so emotional that tears welled up in her eyes. "It's him. I saw it, I saw it." Yun Shirshir was so emotional that she could not express it with words. Mu Yaja also smiled happily and hugged her shoulders. At the same time, he saw Gu Jinglian standing at the bow of the ship. The two men looked at each other, but the faint smell of gunpowder that they used to have when they met each other was gone. According to Gong Jia, Xiaoqian had a fight on Gu Jinglian's ship. Gu Jinglian threatened him that if he lost, he would be thrown into the sea. He knew that Gu Jinglian was just joking, but Xiaoqian took it seriously. He really beat the guy up, but he beat him up badly. When he heard that, he was immediately overjoyed. As expected of his son. After learning about this, he felt an inexplicable sense of accomplishment. This made him feel even prouder than if he had won a project worth hundreds of millions. They had not contacted each other for so many days. Although he did not say anything, he was still thinking about Xiaoqian. When she found out that he was coming back today, she didn't sleep at all and rushed over early in the morning. When Xiaoqian saw Mu Yaja and Yun Shirshir, he immediately pulled Lisa aside and said, "Do you see that man in black? The very tall one. He's my daddy. The one in the camel coat next to her is my mommy. How is it? Beautiful, right? Isn't she pretty? She has a good temperament, right?" Lisa nodded, but in her heart she thought, "Why don't I see you praising your daddy for being handsome? You're too biased. Why don't I see you and Yueyao?" Xiaoqian could not help but feel a little disappointed that he did not see the two little guys. The escalator was already set up. Xiaoqian immediately pulled Lisa and rushed over. When they were about 3 steps away from the ground, Xiaoqian could not wait to pounce on Yun Shirshir. He was not light anymore. He fell into Yun Shirshir's arms. If it weren't for Mu Yaja's steady support, he would have fallen to the ground. Mu Yaja was a little speechless. This lad pounced on Yun Shirshir at the first opportunity and completely ignored him. His daddy at the side. "Mommy, I'm going home." Chapter 3672. Daddy. The way she called him daddy completely dispelled the displeasure of being ignored. Mu Yaja smiled. "Okay. I'm going home, I'm going home." Xiaoqian was so emotional that tears welled up in his eyes. When Yun Shirshir saw this, she couldn't help but be moved as well. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "It's good to be home. It's good to be home. Mommy missed you so much." Yun Shirshir hugged Xiaoqian affectionately. On the other hand, Xiaoqian hugged Yun Shirshir tightly and refused to let go. Mu Yaja hugged Yun Shirshir and the three of them hugged each other tightly. This heartwarming scene made Lisa, who was standing at the side, feel emotional. The family was reunited. She was genuinely happy for Xiaoyichen. How wonderful! Xiaoyichen suddenly thought of something. He gently shook off Yun Shishir's arm and turned his head to look to the side. He saw Lisa standing uneasily behind him. People were coming and going, but she was all alone, watching them silently. Lisa, come here. He waved at her. Lisa was a little hesitant. She didn't know what to do. Good girl, come here. Under Xiaoyichen's encouragement, Lisa finally took a step forward. She had the courage to take the first step. She slowly walked in front of Xiaoyichen and stood in front of Muyaja and Yun Shishir, but she was still a little uneasy. Let me introduce you. Xiaoyichen turned to look at Muyaja and Yun Shishir and introduced her to them. This is Lisa. She was the one who protected me when I left Ashland Island. She is also Yu Yu's personal bodyguard. Muyaja and Yun Shishir looked at Lisa and smiled. Hello. Thank you, Lisa. Yun Shishir hugged her gently. Thank you for bringing Xiaoyichen back. Lisa's body stiffened when she was hugged. When Yun Shishir released her, she took half a step back uneasily and explained softly. Actually, it's nothing. Mommy, can I discuss something with you? Xiaoyichen looked at Yun Shishir seriously and said in a negotiating tone. In the future, let's make Lisa our family. Okay? She doesn't have a daddy or a mommy. She's been an orphan since she was young. I want to give her a home. I want her to be like Yueyao, with a daddy and a mommy. Yun Shishir was a little stunned when she heard this. She did not expect Xiaoyichen to make such a request. However, her slight hesitation caused Lisa to misunderstand. She had thought that Yun Shishir was a little unwilling. After all, it was indeed difficult for her to acknowledge an unrelated girl as her daughter for no good reason, right? She did not like to make things difficult for others. She immediately pulled Xiaoyichen over and muttered, Muyichen, are you serious? I was just joking with you last night. I wasn't joking. Muyichen said seriously. Didn't we agree on this? My home is your home. Lisa, you have a home in the future too. Yes. Yun Shishir immediately said. Lisa, just like Xiaoyichen said, stay. Huh. But. Lisa was obviously a little embarrassed. Yun Shishir smiled and said, Why? You don't want to? Lisa hurriedly shook her head. It wasn't that she didn't want to. She was so nervous that her fingers were trembling. Lisa looked at Xiaoyichen, then at Muyaja and Yun Shishir. She asked tentatively, Can I? Were they really willing? Actually, she also wanted to have a home. It was just that she did not want to force herself. Chapter 3673. Muyichen suddenly held her hand, followed by Yun Shishir's, and gently placed Lisa's hand on Yun Shishir's. Lisa, from now on my home is your home. Okay? Xiaoyichen smiled. Yun Shishir glanced at Muyaja and then at Lisa before gently holding her hand. Lisa's heart trembled. This woman's hand was very warm. She could not help but be greedy for such warmth. It was just that. Yun Shishir's heart ached a little as she held her little hand. Lisa's hand was a little rough. Her palm was full of calluses from training. Especially on the palm of his left hand, there was a scar caused by a dagger. It was very rough. Yun Shishir's heart ached for her. She had heard Gong Jie mention some things about Lisa. Such a young girl was actually the world's top assassin. What kind of cruel training did he have to go through to be able to develop such skills? She put herself in Yun Shishir's shoes. If Yueyao had suffered so much, Yun Shishir's heart would definitely ache. Moreover, this girl had once protected Yu Yu with her life. Now, she had brought Xiaoyichen back to her side safe and sound. Yun Shishir was so grateful that she could not repay her kindness. Lisa, stay, okay? We're very willing to accept you as our family. Yun Shishir expressed her stance. This was also Muyaja's stance. Lisa hesitated for a long time before finally nodding. She looked seriously into Yun Shishir's eyes and smiled knowingly. Okay. Xiaoyichen excitedly hugged her when he heard this. Lisa's face turned red from embarrassment, but she did not push him away. Instead, she squinted her eyes and smiled. Muyichen. Yun Tianyo's voice suddenly came from behind. Muyichen looked in the direction of the voice in shock, and saw Yu Yu walking toward him with Yueyao in his arms. Seeing Yu Yu again, although he did not have the familiar warm smile, He did not have the cold expression he had when he saw him on Ashland Island. Mui-chin and Lisa were a little stunned. Has he regained his memory? She asked Yun Shirshir in a low voice. Yun Shirshir shook her head dejectedly and said, I believe that he'll recover sooner or later. Even if he did not, it did not matter. Yu was still Yu. No matter what he had become, he would still be her Yu. Yu was still unsmiling even when he walked up to Mui-chen. Mui-chen did not expect Yu to come and fetch him too. He walked up to Yu. Yao, who was in his arms, saw Mui-chen and was all smiles. She extended her arms toward him. Xiaoyi-chen immediately took the boy from Yu's arms. Yao, big brother is home. Xiaoyi-chen hugged Yao lovingly. Even his voice was faintly trembling. He squeezed Yao's little hand and asked gently, Yao, big brother isn't home. Did you miss big brother? Yao opened her little mouth and pouted. Yes. Xiaoyi-chen was even more elated when he heard this. Yao tilted her head and asked, Did big brother bring anything delicious back? She had just grown out her teeth, so her speech was still a little slurred. Her voice was tender and childish. When Xiaoyi-chen heard this, he immediately searched his pocket and found something to eat. He passed it to Yao. Lisa glanced at it and burst out laughing. It was a hardtack. Chapter 3674. Yao stared at the compressed biscuit, not knowing what it was. Xiaoyi-chen took it with one hand and tore open the packaging with his mouth. Then he passed the biscuit to her. Yao was craving it. She immediately held the biscuit in her hands and gnawed on it. However, the compressed biscuit was very firm. Her teeth had just grown out and were very tender. She couldn't bite it no matter how hard she tried. But her saliva got all over her hand. Yao gnawed on the biscuit pitifully. It was obvious that she was having a hard time. This made Muyaja and Yun Shirshir laugh. That's great. Just treat it as grinding teeth. Yun Shirshir said. Mui-chen laughed. However, Yu suddenly said, Mui-chen. He turned his head and met Yu's eyes. Yu suddenly smiled. Welcome home. Welcome home. Xiaoyi-chen was stunned. He really didn't expect Yu to say such warm words when she had lost her memory. He seemed to recall the hypnotic dream again. In the dream, he stood outside the villa and looked fervently at the happy scene of the family of 4 in the villa. The door of the villa suddenly opened. Daddy, Mommy, and Yu stood at the door with Yao in his arms. They smiled at him. He had been firm from the beginning. Even if the whole world betrayed him, be it Daddy, Mommy, Yu or Yao, that family would always be his family. They would never betray him. Xiaoyi-chen reached out his left arm and hugged Yu's shoulder. His eyes couldn't help but moisten. Xiaoyi-chen smiled with tears in his eyes. Brother is home. Yu smiled quietly. Regardless of whether her memory had recovered, Yu had truly accepted him from the bottom of her heart. Mui-chen also understood that Yu hadn't recovered her memory, but it didn't matter. They would get to know each other again and get along with each other again. There was still a long way to go. Blood ties couldn't be severed no matter what. Let's go home. Yun Shirshir took Yao from Xiaoyi-chen's arms, and the group went home. Before they left, Muyaja suddenly felt a gaze on his back. And he immediately said, Get in the car. While. And Yu. And. Muyaja slowly turned around and saw Gu Jinglian standing at the bow of the boat, looking down at him. He had seen the scene just now. He didn't know why, but he felt warm in his heart. Such a scene seemed to be familiar to him. He remembered that when he returned from North Africa, he also had the same feeling. They were home. The concept of home was suddenly very clear. The two men's eyes met, but they didn't say much. Sometimes the expression between men was just that simple. One look and everything was clear. Muyaja was expressing his gratitude to him. However, although Gu Jinglian looked disdainful on the surface, his arrogant personality hid a gentle heart. If it had been in the past, he would have chosen to ignore the distress signal from the yacht. However, his experience in North Africa made him have a new understanding of life. He didn't expect that he would accidentally save the two children, Mui-chen and Lisa. In that case, he had done Muyaja a huge favor. Chapter 3675. When it came to the Mu and Gu families, Mu Yaja and Gu Jinglian's names were intimidating. The two emperor-like men in the capital could be said to be on par with each other. Perhaps it was the appreciation between the strong. Even though there were some grudges between the previous generation, they still maintained the etiquette of not interfering with each other's business in their generation. Now it could be said that because of this matter, the Mu and Gu families had made peace. As Gu Jinglian walked down the escalator, Mu Yaja walked up to him and spoke first. I heard that young Master Gu's wedding is imminent? Earlier on, Gu Jinglian had heard that he was planning a wedding. Actually, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho did not care much about the wedding. However, Uncle Fu and Xiao Bao had been egging them on, and Lin Shi had also added fuel to the fire. They had always wanted to hold a wedding. Gu Jinglian thought about it. After all, the Gu family had not had such a lively event for many years. Hence he agreed to it. Although Gu Jinglian had previously expressed his disdain for the wedding, when it was time to actually hold it, he still personally prepared for it, even though he did not say anything. There was once when he was instructing Uncle Fu to decorate the bridal chamber, and Chu Ho bumped into him. Gu Jinglian was so embarrassed. However, Chu Ho was thick-skinned and took pleasure in his misfortune. She thought that Gu Jinglian was forced by Uncle Fu. Gu Jinglian was even angrier. However, although he was angry, he still made meticulous preparations. Seeing that Mu Yaja had taken the initiative to bring up this matter, Gu Jinglian was a little surprised. However, he did not show it. Instead, he raised his eyes and glanced at Mu Yaja. He asked calmly, "Young Master Mu, are you saying that you want to give me a big gift?" Mu Yaja smiled and said, "That depends on whether young Master Gu will invite me or not." Gu Jinglian snorted and said arrogantly, "Whether I invite you or not depends on how sincere your gift is." Mu Yaja appeared to be very calm. There is definitely sincerity. No matter what, you can't break the etiquette. Gu Jinglian finally smiled when he heard this. Mu Yaja was surprised to see him smile. In the past, she had rarely met Gu Jinglian, but it was strange to see Gu Jinglian smile. Gu Jinglian was a rather arrogant man. He was so sharp that even Mu Yaja was not a match for him. But now, for some reason, Mu Yaja felt that Gu Jinglian's sharpness had lessened a little. On the 1st of next month, which is half a month later, Mu Yaja said again, "I will be there on time." Gu Jinglian glanced at him and did not say anything. The entourage behind him came up to him. He looked back and left without saying a word. Mu Yaja broke into laughter and walked toward the parking lot as well. Along the way, Xiaoyichen was chattering non-stop. He told Yun Shirshir and Mu Yaja about the thrilling events at sea. However, Yun Shirshir frowned as she listened. Pirates? Are there really pirates? Yun Shirshir had grown up in a peaceful era. She had only heard about pirates on television. She had never heard of such ferocious pirates in real life. Xiaoyichen had even seen them. Yes. Of course, the pirates of Somalia were famous for being ruthless. If not for Lisa, I wouldn't know how to deal with them alone. Lisa immediately said, "Hey, don't push all the blame to me. You are much more ruthless than me." Chapter 3676. As Yun Shirshir spoke, her expression became increasingly serious. In fact, before this, Lisa had already mentioned to Gong Jie that Gong Xiaoying had hypnotized Mui Chen. Gong Jie had also told Yun Shirshir about this matter. However, Mui Chen did not mention a word about this matter, because it was not worth mentioning. Such a small trick was nothing to him. When Yun Shirshir heard this, she was extremely touched. Yu had been hypnotized, but Xiaoyichen had not been affected. She had not expected that Xiaoyichen, who had seemed the most unreliable in the past, would have such strong conviction at such a critical moment. However, she did not take the initiative to ask about this matter. This was a grudge between her and Gong Xiaoying. She would resolve it. Now that Xiaoyichen had returned home safe and sound, it was already a blessing in disguise. Gong Xiaoying, initially, her hatred for her father was only because of her mother. Her mother had longed for him for so long. She had waited for him for so long, but this man had never appeared in her life. However, now her hatred for him had become more and more unforgettable. He had actually treated Yu and Muichen this way. This was something that she could not forgive no matter what. He was too selfish. In order to keep Yu by his side and use him to fulfill his own ambitions, He had actually sealed his memories. Now he even had thoughts of Xiaoyichen. How cruel was Gong Xiaoying? She put herself in his shoes. Could it be that he did not understand the pain of being forgotten by his family? Along the way, Yun Shirshir was extremely silent. Muyaja understood the pain and hatred in her heart. He gently placed his hand on the back of her hand and said gently, "Sometimes the more you avoid certain things and the more you are unwilling to face them, the more it will never be resolved." Yun Shirshir understood what he meant. "I understand. It's time to end things with that person." Muyaja continued, "This matter is between you and him. I have no right to intervene. However, no matter what decision you make, I will always stand by your side." When Yun Shirshir heard this, she was a little touched. His words were more than enough for her to hear. Yun Shirshir said solemnly, "I will weigh the pros and cons." She decided to make a clean break with Gong Xiaoying. She would never acknowledge this father of hers. At the same time, she wanted to make a declaration to him. No matter what, don't touch her family. Otherwise, no matter how weak she was, she would never let her off. Originally, with the passage of time, she did not intend to fuss over the past grudges and grievances. That was a grudge between his mother and him, and she had no right to intervene. However, now that this matter involved Yu and Xiaoyichen, it had crossed her bottom line. When they reached home, Muyaja carried Muichen into the bathroom and gave him a bath. Since they had been at sea, Muichen did not realize that his body was full of the fishy smell. He rubbed the body wash a few times before the smell subsided. When Gong Jie saw that Muichen was back, he was completely relieved. Yun Shirshir asked him, "Did that person contact you?" "No." Gong Jie knew that when Yun Shirshir said, "that person," she was referring to Gong Xiaoying. Yun Shirshir said hatefully, "He is so heartless. This time I have decided to end things completely with him." Gong Jie was stunned, but he was not surprised. "Perhaps this decision will put you in a difficult position." "No." Chapter 3677. When Xiaoyichen came out of the shower, he felt as if he had shed a layer of skin. Muyaja had bathed him, but it was as if he was washing clothes. He wanted to roll him into a ball and rub him on the washboard. He felt as if his bones were about to fall apart. When Xiaoyichen came out of the bathroom, he did not see Lisa and Yu. He walked around the room suspiciously. When he passed by the balcony, he suddenly saw two figures in the backyard. He narrowed his eyes and walked over to the door. He saw Lisa and Yu with their backs to him. They seemed to be talking about something. Lisa, after being in Hurricane for so long, "You're the person I trust the most." Yu turned around expressionlessly. He sized up Lisa and asked in a low voice, "Is Gong Xiaoying lying to me?" When Xiaoyichen saw this, he held his breath nervously. He did not know how Lisa should answer. Lisa was a member of Hurricane. Would she betray Gong Xiaoying? Just when Xiaoyichen was feeling uneasy, Lisa smiled and said calmly, "Gong Xiaoying is indeed lying to you. Why would he lie to me?" "There are two reasons." "Two reasons?" Yu frowned and said suspiciously, "Tell me." "First, you're his grandson. You're his family. Naturally, he wants to keep you by his side. Second, you have extraordinary talents. He wants to make use of you to complete the Deva Eye project." When Yu heard this, he could not help but fall silent. He was a little sad. He did not expect that the man he trusted so much would make use of him like this. "I lost a lot of my memories." The boy sucked in a deep breath of cold air. "Do you know why I lost my memories, though?" "Because..." Lisa hesitated for a moment and immediately said, "Alice hypnotized you." "Hypnosis?" Yu was a little suspicious. "Xiaoyichen was also hypnotized, but you said that the hypnosis failed. Why did his hypnosis fail but mine did?" Lisa frowned and hesitated. "Because you're different from him." "What do you mean?" Yu was a little unhappy. "Are you saying that my beliefs and willpower are not as strong as his?" "Because you have two." These words stunned Yu. He didn't quite understand what Lisa was trying to say. "What do you mean I have two?" Lisa explained. "Alice said that you have two personalities, one full of sunshine, the other full of darkness. As for hypnotism, it made use of this point to use the second personality to kill the first personality." At that time, Alice was also very surprised. This was because, generally speaking, for people with dual personalities, the second personality would never be able to replace the first personality. However, your first personality had really disappeared from your body. Your first personality was the you that everyone was familiar with. After your first personality disappeared, all the memories of your first personality were sealed up. You listened, but he didn't quite understand. He didn't know that he had two personalities. He also didn't know what dual personalities meant. Lisa explained it to him again. Then he vaguely understood. So, you're saying that the second personality is controlling me now? Yes. Yu asked tentatively. Can I go back to how I was before? Chapter 3678. Lisa also shook her head. Alice said that there can only be one split personality. Otherwise, there will be a day when one's mind is destroyed. There can only be one split personality between the first and second personality. If you can really go back to the past, then the current you will disappear. Yu was stunned when he heard this. The current me will disappear? Yes. Then, Yu suddenly felt suffocated. Will all my memories of the present disappear as well? Just like how you won't be able to remember everything that happened in the past. Because in the past you had two personalities. One was very gentle and kind. The other was a destructive personality. If you want to get something, you will become cruel and unscrupulous. You will even pay any price. Yu fell silent when he heard this. He suddenly lowered his head and looked at his hands. He gently curled them into fists and then relaxed them. The feeling he got from his hands made him feel that he was still alive. However, Lisa said that if the two personalities existed at the same time, they would reject each other. Finally, one day the mind would be destroyed. However, was the current him going to give up this body to the previous Yu? He couldn't do it. Every personality was selfish. He wasn't willing to leave this body because there was a longing in his heart. Although he didn't say it and didn't express it, he really wanted to stay in this family and become a part of it. Then, Yu said dejectedly, if I leave this body, will the previous Yu return to this body? Maybe. If he disappears, he might not be able to come back. Yu looked a little stunned. He knew in his heart that others didn't know. But he knew that the previous Yu hadn't disappeared. In other words, the first personality hadn't disappeared from the body. It still carried the memories and was sealed in the depths of the body. He would often dream of that child. That Yu was trapped in a prison. He could often see him and talk to him. He had dreamed countless times that he was traveling on the sea with a child. He was wearing a black shirt, and the child was wearing a white shirt. The child was running non-stop, and he was absorbing the child into his body. Then Yu disappeared. He took his place. It turned out that the child was another personality. He had no way of knowing. He only thought that he was the invader, another version of himself. He never thought that the two personalities were two completely different entities. Why? He had to create two him. Why did he have to compete with a child for a body when he was the one who created him and brought him to this world? He also wanted to exist. But how should he exist? Yu asked calmly. Compared to me, they probably prefer the old Yu, don't they? Lisa looked at him in surprise but didn't say anything. Daddy is one, Mommy is one, Little Ichin is one, and so is Yueyao. Including you, Lisa, right? Compared to me, you want the old Yu to come back, right? Chapter 3679. On the other hand, he wasn't needed, wasn't liked, and didn't have any value in his existence. Lisa couldn't say a word for a long time. She didn't expect Yu to be so sensitive as to say that. However, it was the truth. Lisa missed the Yu of the past, the gentle and kind Yu. However, her heart ached when she heard what he said. Xiaoichen's voice suddenly came from behind. You're needed. Yu was stunned. He turned around in shock and looked at Xiaoichen. Seeing him walking towards him slowly, he didn't know what to do. He said unhappily, why were you eavesdropping on our conversation? What do you mean by eavesdropping? Little Ichin said matter-of-factly, I'm clearly listening openly. Yu was speechless. Who said you're not needed? Whether it's the Yu of the past or the Yu of the present, we need both of you. Not one less. Yu couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. He pursed his lips and said coldly, what if you had to choose between the two Yu? Xiaoichin was stunned when he heard this. He asked in confusion. Why would I have to choose between the two? Because there's only one personality in this body. Yu looked at him with a burning gaze. If you had to choose, which one would you choose? Xiaoqian was speechless. Yu already knew the answer. He didn't seem to care, but he was a little disappointed. However, he still maintained his cold expression and said calmly, Your choice is definitely not me, right? Xiaoqian hesitated. Is there no other choice? No. Yu smiled again. Actually, you've already told me your answer. As he said this, his face became cold again and he brushed past him. Xiaoqian stood rooted to the ground in a daze. For a moment he couldn't come back to his senses. Lisa looked at Yu who was walking away and felt a suffocating pain in her heart. She could empathize with this kind of disappointment and helplessness of not being needed. Lisa's heart ached. She really didn't know how to choose. If it really came to that point, whether it was Muyaja, Yun Shishir, Xiaoqian or Yueyao, they would all choose the Yu of the past, right? Even he himself seemed to have made such a choice subconsciously. What about the Yu now? Was she really not needed anymore? Mommy. Mother's answer is to know how long's not to be heard. What's the matter? Yun Shishir didn't notice the loneliness and hesitation in her son's voice. Now that Xiaoqian was back, she wanted to show off her cooking skills and cook a table full of delicious dishes. Mommy, do you know that Yu has dissociative identity disorder? Yun Shishir stopped what she was doing. She turned around in confusion and looked at Xiaoqian. Frowning, she asked, Why did you suddenly bring this up? One is the gentle Yu of the past, and the other is the Yu of the present. If you had to choose, which one would you choose? Is it the Yu of the past? Why must you make such a cruel choice? Yun Shishir was a little worried. No matter who it is, Yu is still Yu, isn't it? Chapter 3680. Xiaoqian continued. If you choose the current Yu, then the old Yu will be completely destroyed. If you choose the old Yu, then the current Yu will also disappear from your body. Yun Shishir frowned slightly. Mommy, don't you want the old Yu to come back? Yes. Then what about the current Yu? Yun Shishir suddenly fell silent. She sighed. I don't want to lose any of them. In the study room, Yu sat on the chair and looked out of the French window quietly. He suddenly felt a little envious. He had never envied anyone except for Yu. It was only when he became part of his life that he started to feel envious. The old Yu had led such a happy life. Every night, Yun Shishir would read him a bedtime story. Even though he always felt that such stories were childish and ridiculous, he would fall asleep without nightmares as he listened to her gentle voice. In the morning, Muyaja would wake him up for a morning run. He gradually fell in love with such a life. It was a life where he could rely on and be relied on. Yu led such a life for 8 years. But he had never had it. Just like what Lisa had said, if he had never had it, he would not have longed for it. However, once he had it and tasted happiness, it would be extremely difficult to give it up. Yu turned around. The desk beside him was where the old Yu used to work. His fingers gently caressed the solid wood surface of the desk. The smooth and slightly cold touch made him feel a little lost. Just like this desk and everything here, it did not seem to belong to him. He had no choice but to accept all of this logically and with a clear conscience. However, he felt a little unwilling to give up this position. What the old Yu could not do, he could do. What the old Yu could do, he could do better. He wanted to stay. Yu suddenly stood up and stood in front of the bed. He gazed at the scenery in the garden. In the back garden, beautiful Chinese roses were blooming proudly. Have the two children successfully reached the capital? Ashland Island. Gong Xiaoying sat on the bed in the bedroom. This bed used to be Yu's bed and Xiaoqian's bed. His subordinate immediately replied, As far as I know, the two children have returned to the capital. Gong Xiaoying's eyes were filled with surprise. Yu. We searched along the way and found the yacht they were on when they left. There was a corpse on it. According to our analysis, it was the corpse of a pirate. Gong Xiaoying became nervous. Pirates? Did they encounter pirates? A few days ago, their yacht was probably caught in a storm at sea, so they turned back and encountered pirates. After a pause, he explained, But I don't think they were hurt. They hung the corpse on the pole of the yacht as a deterrent. Gong Xiaoying was relieved when he heard this. He was surprised and delighted. He did not expect his two grandsons to be so capable. One was intelligent and the other had amazing martial arts skills. What about Lisa? Didn't she come back? No. Forget it, let her be. She only has one master in her heart. As Gong Xiaoying said this, he waved his hand and his subordinates left respectfully. Chapter 3681. Everything had come to an end. Whether it was the absurdity, the ambition, or the decades of hatred, they had finally let go. Gong Xiaoying sighed. His back seemed to have aged a lot. It's time to eat. The family sat down at the dining table. The dining table was huge. Even if the 7 of them squeezed together, it was still big enough. Hua Jin had rushed back from the set when he found out that Xiaoyichen had returned home. Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir sat on one side, Gong Jia and Yu sat on the other, Xiaoyichen and Lisa sat on the other, and Hua Jin and little Yueyao sat on the other. Lisa only felt that the attractiveness of this table was simply star-studded. Gong Jia and Hua Jin were especially good-looking. Gong Jia was especially particular about dressing up. Hua Jin had just returned from the set, so he still had a thick layer of makeup on his face. Xiaoyichen teased him. Uncle Hua Jin, aren't you going to remove your makeup before eating? What if the powder on your face floats into my bowl? Hua Jin choked and said angrily. Xiaoyichen, I was looking forward to seeing you come home. You're teasing me the moment you're back. I'm not happy. That's right. Yun Shishir immediately stopped them and said, all right, it's rare that we're happy today. Stop arguing and start eating. Try my cooking. Everyone had already picked up their chopsticks, but when they heard that Yun Shishir was cooking, they were all stunned. Isn't brother-in-law cooking tonight? Mu Yaja said innocently. No. After being married for so long, Mu Yaja was usually the one who cooked. After a year, he had perfected his culinary skills. Although he wasn't as good as Yu's cooking from a 5-star hotel, he was still good at cooking basic home-cooked dishes. Yun Shishir rarely cooked. However, whether it was Gong Jia or Hua Jin, they all remembered that Yun Shishir would occasionally cook some dark dishes. They didn't dare to eat. Hua Jin said pitifully, I miss Yu's cooking. I don't know when I'll be able to taste it. Yu frowned in confusion. Was my cooking in the past? When he asked this question, the group of people looked at him seriously and nodded in unison. Gong Jia said, I've always been picky, but as long as it's your cooking, I can't find anything wrong with it. Yu couldn't help but be stunned. Hua Jin added, Yu's cooking is very good. At least, I haven't seen anyone who can cook better than Yu. Lisa clumsily picked up her chopsticks. She knew how to use chopsticks, but she still couldn't get used to it. She looked at the dishes and didn't know where to start, because these dishes were all unheard of. After being in Hurricane for so long, she was used to eating Western food and rarely touched Chinese food. Occasionally, she would eat Chinese food, but it was already Western-style Chinese food. She had never eaten authentic Chinese food. What is this? This is steamed chicken. Dip it in the sauce and it'll be delicious. Yun Shishir added. This is ready-made from the market. After she said that, the group of people rushed to grab the steamed chicken with their chopsticks. Yun Shishir couldn't help but feel speechless. They were so enthusiastic when they heard that she didn't cook it. These people must be deliberately trying to undermine her. Lisa picked up a piece of chicken and dipped it in the sauce as Yun Shishir said. She took a bite and her eyes lit up. Yun Shishir's gaze was fervent. Is it to your taste? Yes, it's delicious. Chapter 3682. Lisa finished the chicken in no time and picked up another piece. This time she dipped it in more sauce. It was obvious that she liked to eat boiled chicken. Yun Shishir introduced the dishes one by one. This is red braised pork, this is old goose soup, this is... What kind of meat is red braised pork made of? Pork. Yun Shishir probed. Do you have any taboos? Some people's religious beliefs forbade pork. Lisa shook her head. I eat all kinds of meat. Xiaoyichen shivered. You eat human meat too? Lisa smiled. Of course, if you're willing to contribute yourself. Everyone at the table laughed. The atmosphere became lively all of a sudden. Lisa quickly got used to the warm atmosphere of the dinner. In the past, when they ate in Hurricane, the huge dining hall was very quiet and silent. Everyone sat at one table and hurriedly finished their meal and left. Eating was just to relieve hunger and it didn't take too long. This was the first time she ate with so many people. At first she felt a little awkward. However, as she got familiar with them, she also felt that it would be very lively to have so many people eating and chatting together. Huajin narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, "Today, I overheard a few extras chatting on set and learned about a very cruel dish." Cruel? Yun Shishir frowned. What dish? Sanji Sanjer? Gongjia was curious when he heard that. Why is it called Sanjer? Because it has something to do with the ingredients of the dish. Gongjia's face darkened. Don't keep me in suspense. Huajin was afraid when he saw his expression. He immediately sat up straight and said, "The main dish is a newborn live rat. The person who eats it will use a pair of red-hot iron chopsticks to pick up the rat. It will squeak once and this is the first squeak. When it is dipped in seasoning it will squeak again and this is the second squeak. When it is placed in the mouth it will squeak again, so it is called sanjir. I heard that this dish is very delicious, but it is especially scary when eaten." As soon as Huajin finished speaking, the group of people silently put down their chopsticks. Yun Shishir in particular felt nauseous. Live rats? It's not a rat. It's a hairy rat. It's artificially bred and very hygienic. How strange. There are still people who eat rats alive. Xiaoyichen covered her mouth. That's disgusting. Uncle Huajin, you must be here to cause trouble. It wasn't easy for mommy to cook a table of dishes, but you ruined everyone's appetite. Huajin said innocently, I'm innocent. I only said it because Master Jia asked me to. Gongjia said angrily, if you didn't mention it, would I have asked you? I won't take the blame for this. Yun Shishir warned, you're not allowed to say such disgusting things again. Lisa, on the other hand, was very calm. No one touched their chopsticks. She was the only one who was seriously studying the braised pork. Xiaoyichen asked in confusion. Lisa, don't you feel disgusted? I don't. Lisa said calmly. I've seen people eat live bamboo rats before. Oh. The group of people fell silent. That's disgusting. Huajin was obviously disgusted. Actually, it's not particularly disgusting. It's okay. It's just that I don't have the courage to eat live things unless I have no other choice. As Lisa spoke, she put a piece of braised pork into her mouth and chewed contentedly. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. The braised pork is delicious. Chapter 3683. Muyaja took a bite, but his expression was one of disdain. Yun Shishir was unhappy when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Is it not good? It's not as good as you use. Lisa, it's such a pity. You use red braised pork used to be the best. It's just a pity that you didn't come at the right time. Yun Shishir was full of confidence. However, Yu took a bite of the red braised pork and finally gave a pertinent comment. I don't remember the red braised pork I made in the past, but Mommy's red braised pork is very delicious. He had always been a man of few words. However, his words helped to clear Yun Shishir's name. Hearing Yu's support for her, Yun Shishir was so excited that her eyes sparkled. She was filled with confidence. After dinner, Xiaoyichen had just made his bed when he suddenly thought of Lisa. He asked Yun Shishir curiously, Mommy, have you prepared a room for Lisa? How would I have time to prepare a room now? Yun Shishir continued, but Lisa will definitely have a room tonight. When Lisa heard this, she immediately said, I can sleep on the sofa too. How can you sleep on the sofa? It will be very cold at night. Xiaoyichen disagreed. Yun Shishir said, Lisa, can you stay in Yueyao's room? Yueyao's room? Yes. Yueyao is still young, so the room has been prepared long ago. However, who knows when Yueyao will be able to stay in her room? You can stay in that room for now. When Yueyao is older, we can prepare a new room for her. At least for the next few years, I won't feel comfortable letting her stay in such a big room alone. Yun Shishir took Lisa to a room on the second floor. When Yueyao was still in her stomach, Muyaja had personally decorated the princess room. However, he had obviously overlooked the fact that it would take a long time for Yueyao to grow up and sleep alone in a big room. Therefore, this room had been empty until now. Fortunately, there were people who cleaned it regularly, so it was very clean. Yoon Shirshir had just pushed open the door when she saw Lisa standing at the doorway. She glanced over and felt her heart twist violently. At a glance, everything was pink. The room had a simple American style. There was a small white bed with pink curtains. Muyaja had thoughtfully chosen a bed with a railing. The most adorable thing was that the bed was a bunk bed. There were 2 rows of beds. The lower row was designed with a desk and a row of wardrobes. The top of the bed was designed in the shape of a castle. Other than that, there was a computer, a walk-in closet, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a beautifully decorated balcony. The pink walls, pink curtains, and pink and white curtains were a very harmonious combination. A room like this was very big for Lisa. At a glance, it was about 40 square meters. There was a separate bathroom with a circular bathtub. Beside the bathtub, there was a shower function. She could take a bath and take a shower to satisfy her needs. Yoon Shirshir squatted in front of Lisa and asked, "From now on, you can stay in this room. Okay?" Lisa blushed a little and said embarrassedly, "Then what about Yueyao? Didn't I say that when Yueyao grows up, it's still too early for her to live alone?" "Okay, thank you, Auntie." Lisa thanked her politely. She looked around the room and couldn't help but laugh. It was all pink for young girls. However, she didn't like pink that much. However, she didn't care about the color as long as there was a bed. Chapter 3684. Yoon Shirshir took out a blanket from the wardrobe and spread it out for her. Suddenly, she thought of something and said to Lisa, "I'll bring you to buy some clothes tomorrow. I'm fine with anything." Lisa was not particular when it came to clothes. Usually, she would wear tighter-fitting clothes. She would wear a combat vest all year round. When there were no missions to be carried out, she would wear the simplest kind of undershirt and camouflage trousers. Clothes were bought according to size. Hence, Lisa was really careless when it came to dressing. How can you dress casually? You can't always dress like a boy, right? A girl should wear a dress and dress up beautifully. As Yoon Shirshir said this, she helped her tidy up her clothes and smiled. "Do you know that you use father loves daughters the most?" When he was pregnant with his younger sister, he kept saying that he must have a daughter. Luckily, it was really a younger sister. If it was a younger brother, I'm afraid he would have given up all his hopes. "Isn't it good to have a son?" Lisa said. "I just wish I was a boy, so that I could be a little stronger and grow a little taller." "Isn't it good to be a girl?" "It's troublesome to be a girl," Lisa said plainly. "Girls will be bullied." When Yoon Shirshir heard this, she was a little stunned. How can girls be bullied? Girls should be protected. Lisa lowered her head and suddenly stopped talking. Yoon Shirshir saw that she was a little disappointed and said helplessly, "I don't know what you've been through in the past, but from now on, since you're part of our family, you're as good as my daughter. In my heart, daughters are little princesses. They should wear dresses and dress up beautifully. If anyone dares to bully you, Xiaoi Chen will be the first to stand up and protect you." Him. Lisa smiled. "He might not be able to defeat me." Yoon Shirshir was speechless. As Lisa said this, she clenched her fists slightly. The muscles on her muscular arms suddenly became clear. The lines of her arms were especially beautiful. Her muscles were not bloated, but they had beautiful curves and texture. Yoon Shirshir was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She raised her hand and gently pinched her triceps. She was scared out of her wits. "You look rather skinny. I didn't expect you to be so lean." The flesh on Lisa's body was all muscle, without a trace of excess fat or fat. Therefore, even though she looked very skinny in reality, her strength was even more terrifying than that of a grown man. Lisa smiled. "I've been training since I was young. All of this is the result of training." "Then you can definitely do a lot of push-ups." "I don't do push-ups. That kind of training doesn't work for me." "Then what kind of training do you usually do?" Lisa raised her eyebrows and took half a step back. She placed her left hand behind her back and used her right arm to do a handstand. She did it steadily without the slightest wobble. Just as Yoon Shirshir was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth, she saw Lisa's right hand, which was supporting herself on the ground, suddenly raise 2 fingers. She used only her index and middle fingers to do a handstand. Moreover, she didn't just do a handstand. She bent her arm and straightened it again. Her handstand was terrifyingly accurate. Lisa landed on the ground and stood up. Her face was not red and her heart was not beating fast. I usually train like this. Yoon Shirshir was speechless. What a terrifying level of training. She trained her body so well. This girl. Chapter 3685. When Lisa finished showering and walked out of the shower, Yoon Shirshir had already tidied up the room. She added a lot of furnishings and even made the bed for her. You're done showering? Yoon Shirshir said as she tidied up the bedding. One blanket shouldn't be cold. It's made of goose down. I also brought a blanket for you so you might feel hot. If you feel hot at night, just remove the blanket. As she nagged, Lisa felt extremely warm. So was this how a home felt like? She walked to the side of the bed, but she was at a loss. She said hurriedly, I'll tidy up the room myself. It's late. You should go to bed. Yoon Shirshir stood up and said, I've already tidied up the room. How about this? I know what I'm missing. I'll just buy it tomorrow. Lisa smiled. I don't think I'm missing anything. I'm already satisfied with a bed and a bathroom. You're so easily satisfied? Yoon Shirshir brought the pajamas over. However, you might have to be more particular tonight. Wear Xiaochen's pajamas first. Lisa glanced at the sky blue pajamas in her hands and felt a little awkward. Xiaochen's pajamas? Don't worry. I've already washed them clean. You don't mind being particular all night, right? She didn't mind at all. It was just that. She was just a little shy. Lisa hugged the pajamas tightly and nodded. Just as she was about to change into them, Yoon Shirshir immediately walked over and drew the curtains. She said angrily, Lisa, you're too bold. You didn't even draw the curtains before changing into your clothes. She blinked her eyes in confusion. Yoon Shirshir found it funny too. Perhaps she was making a fuss over nothing. Lisa was still a little girl and had grown up in Hurricane. She was probably used to interacting with men, so her behavior was as straightforward as a boy's and she didn't care about the details. However, although she didn't have much meat on her, it was better to develop this habit. She was a girl after all. Just as Yoon Shirshir was about to leave, she suddenly thought of something. She turned back to the room and asked tentatively, Lisa? Xiaochen said that you like to listen to bedtime stories too, Lisa was stunned for a moment before she gently nodded. I've never heard of you, but I heard from Xiaochen that you always read him bedtime stories. I'll read it for you. Yoon Shirshir said and went to the study to find some fairy tale picture books. When she walked into the room, Lisa was lying on the bed with her eyes open, as if she was waiting for something. She sat down by the bed and flipped through a few pages. When she saw the first story, she asked, Have you heard of the Little Match Girl? No. Then let's talk about this today. The Little Match Girl. This was a classic fairy tale. It tells the sad fate of a little girl who sold matches on Christmas Eve. Because she didn't sell a single match. The little girl hadn't eaten for a day. She was cold and hungry. When she lit the first match, she saw a fragrant roast goose. When she lit the second match, she saw a beautiful Christmas tree. When she lit the third match, she saw her grandmother, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. She wanted her grandmother to stay by her side, so she lit an entire bunch of matches. Chapter 3686. Her voice seemed to have a unique magical power. The words in the book seemed to turn into a vivid dream as Yoon Shirshir's gentle voice spoke. Lisa actually fell asleep peacefully with the dream realm as her pillow. Before Yoon Shirshir could finish reading the ending, she saw that Lisa had fallen asleep. She looked at the story again and felt that the ending of the fairy tale was too tragic. She thought for a moment and changed the ending. As she tucked Lisa in the quilt, she said, After the last match was lit, the little girl saw her grandmother again. She tried to reach out her hand, but she didn't expect that she would grab her grandmother's hand. It was so warm. She said, Grandmother, I want to be with you. The light from the match gradually extinguished. The little girl leaned against the wall and fell asleep quietly. The next day, people found a frozen little girl curled up in the corner. Everyone pitied her, but in reality, the little girl went to heaven with her grandmother and lived happily ever after. Bam! The lights went off. Yoon Shirshir placed the fairy tale at the head of the bed. She stood up gently and left the room. In the living room, Muyaja had just finished showering. When he saw her coming downstairs, he raised his eyebrows and asked, Lisa is asleep? Yeah, she's asleep. Yu and Xiaoichen are still waiting for you to read them a bedtime story. Yun Shishir's hand, which was holding the glass of water, paused. She said weakly, Daddy. Huh? What's the matter, Mommy? I'll have to trouble you with today's bedtime story. Muyaja raised his eyebrows and said, Sure. In the bedroom, Xiaoichen pulled the blanket over himself. He was eagerly anticipating Yun Shishir's arrival. It had been a long time since he heard a bedtime story. He had been thinking about it for so long. However, just as he was anticipating it, Xiaoichen saw Muyaja enter the room with the fairy tale. He was stunned and sat up abruptly. Daddy, why are you here? Why can't it be me? Muyaja said indifferently. Your mother is unwell. Today I will read you a bedtime story. Xiaoichen said awkwardly. I don't want you to tell me. Muyaja snorted. Why? Do you dislike Daddy? Daddy, you don't know how to read stories. No matter how beautiful a fairy tale is, it sounds like a curse to you. Muyaja's voice was too deep, so much so that when he read the fairy tale, it was somewhat out of place. If you don't want to hear it, then I will. Muyaja sat on the edge of the bed and flipped open the storybook. Xiaoichen was disgusted and kicked it open. The father and son were in a mess. Yu had already fallen asleep, but she woke up when she heard the commotion. She reached out and grabbed Xiaoichen's face, rubbing it viciously. Ah, Yu, what are you doing? Be quiet. When Yun Shishir passed by the room, she heard the commotion. Curious, she pushed open the door slightly and took a peek. She saw the father and son throwing pillows at each other and arguing fiercely. Xiaoichen, in particular, was red in the face from Muyaja and Yu's joint attack. You two are shameless. 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 Ah! I'll fight it out with you. These three rascals. Muyaja was too much. He was an adult, but he was arguing with two children. Chapter 3687. The next day, Yun Shishir brought the three kids to the mall. Besides buying some daily necessities, she also brought Lisa to buy some clothes. When Lisa arrived, she didn't have any clothes on. Now she was wearing Xiaoichen's clothes. According to the measurements, Xiaoichen's clothes fit her perfectly. Her clothes were too big and Yu's clothes were too small. Yun Shishir bought a lot of princess dresses for Yu. Muyaja had also bought some for her, but they were still too small for Lisa. Lisa was very tall and was almost as tall as Xiaoichen. It was Lisa's first time shopping in a mall. There was a dazzling array of counters and all kinds of dresses and clothes. It was a dazzling sight. Xiaoichen suddenly stopped in front of a children's clothing store. Mommy, this is the store. Yun Shishir and Lisa stopped to take a look. Lisa's face turned red. Why are they all dresses? They look quite nice. They do look nice, but they don't suit me. Lisa had never worn a dress before, so she was a little conflicted about it. Yun Shishir grabbed Lisa's hand and pulled her into the store. Try it on. Aye. Before Lisa could say anything, Yun Shishir dragged her into the store. Yu and Xiaoichen followed closely behind. Xiaoichen was especially enthusiastic about choosing clothes for Lisa. This one is good. And this one. Mommy, look. Lisa stood in the fitting room uneasily. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. She asked, Who is it? It's me. It was Yu's voice. Lisa opened the door and saw Yu holding a dress in his hand. He handed it to her. Try it on. This is. I picked it out. Lisa's face turned even redder, but she didn't reject him. She took the dress from him and locked the door. After changing into the dress, she didn't dare to open the door and walk out. She kept tugging at the hem of the dress because she felt that it was too low. She felt a little awkward. She felt uncomfortable walking in the dress. Outside the door, Yun Shishir asked, Lisa, are you done changing? Yes. Then come out. Hearing her say so, Lisa could only brace herself to open the door and walk out. However, just as she stepped out, she vaguely heard a few gasps, and for a moment her scalp went numb. This dress doesn't suit me. Eyes. Yu on the other hand, but she didn't look surprised. Yu on the other hand sat. Yu. What happened? You look really good in this dress. Lisa was tall and slim, so it suited her to wear a dress that reached her knees. It made her look classy. The dress was simple, but it was beautiful. It was a white blouse and aqua blue spaghetti strap skirt. The design was perfect. There weren't any extra embellishments, but it made her look gentle and beautiful. Xiaoqian walked around her in a circle. He couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. Lisa, I didn't expect you to look so good in a dress. Lisa said. You picked it out. I feel that it's too short. You picked it out. Chapter 3688. Yun Shirshir immediately said. Hey, I picked 2 of them. Mommy's choices are the same as mine. Lisa, try them on. Yun Shirshir was speechless. She sized up Lisa and then Xiaoqian. She felt that there was something fishy going on between the 2 of them. Xiaoqian seemed to be very passionate about Lisa. Could it be? Was this the boys' first awakening of love? It seemed like there was something going on between them. Lisa carried the dress into the fitting room. After a while, she changed into a new dress. She opened the door and walked out. Her expression was not as unnatural as before. It was as if she had gotten used to wearing dresses. However, she still felt a little uncomfortable. The dress that Xiaoqian had picked was brighter. It was made of organza and had pink embellishments. There was a circle of organza roses at the hem of the dress, making it look as if it had been born from a sea of flowers. There were no other embellishments. Lisa looked like a little princess in the dress. What do you think? Xiaoqian looked at Yun Shirshir expectantly. I picked this dress. Does it look good? Yun Shirshir nodded. It looks good. Lisa is a clothes hanger. She looks good in everything. Yu said indifferently, it's too gaudy. It doesn't look as good as the one I picked. Little Chen did not buy it when he heard that. What do you mean by gaudy? That's how girls should dress. If Lisa wears it, she'll look like a little princess. Won't she look beautiful? I don't think so. It doesn't look as good as the one just now. Narcissist. Anyway, Lisa looks good in everything. Lisa's lips twitched when she heard this. She felt like laughing. The 2 of them could even bicker over the dress selection. She really had to hand it to them. Why don't you try the one I picked? Yun Shirshir smiled. I picked the dress that came in a set. All right. Lisa entered the fitting room again. Not long after, she changed her clothes and came out again. Even Yu's gaze couldn't help but change. It had to be said that Yun Shirshir had been in the fashion industry for so many years, and her taste was incomparable to the 2 little guys. She had chosen a dress with elements of Han Chinese clothing. It had a light purple sleeve with black trimmings. It was pure and feminine. It had a matte purple inner garment and a pure white skirt. It had elements of Han Chinese clothing, Hu Jiangli and Pai Jishi, and Yu Cholan and Wei Pei. The jacket was buttoned with a standing collar, and the collar panel echoed the belt. The cuffs are lantern sleeves with decorative lace and intertwining ribbons. There were embroidery details on the collars, and double-sided embroidery on the waistband. It was so beautiful that it was out of this world. Even Yu, who was used to having a discerning eye, felt that the dress, which had elements of traditional Chinese clothing, was perfect on her. Very beautiful. Xiaoqian was also mesmerized. He felt that Lisa was so beautiful that she seemed to be glowing as she stood there. So beautiful. The shop assistant couldn't help but praise. Your daughter looks so good in this dress. Yeah, she's prettier than children's clothing models. With so many people looking at her, Lisa felt increasingly uncomfortable. She held the corner of her dress and lowered her head, not daring to look up. Lisa, take a look around. Xiaoqian said. Lisa held the corner of her dress and didn't move at all. Don't make things difficult for her. Lisa isn't used to wearing dresses anyway. Not used to wearing dresses. The shop assistant was a little surprised. It's a pity that such a beautiful girl doesn't wear dresses. I have a daughter who loves to wear dresses. She imagines herself to be a little princess. Chapter 3689. Yun Shirshir smiled. That's right. Daughters are more precious these days. Xiaoqian heard this and felt unlucky. Isn't it good to have a son? A son is also very considerate. The staff was amused by Xiaoqian's wittiness. This is your son, right? Yes, didn't you see? They're twins. They look exactly the same. The taller one should be the older brother. So cute. Good genes. The staff suddenly looked at Yun Shirshir with a twinkle in her eyes. I suddenly feel that you look familiar. Yun Shirshir raised her eyebrows. Even though she was wearing sunglasses, her facial features were still there. Upon closer inspection, the staff immediately noticed some clues. You're Yoon Shurshur, the one who acted in Lethal Beauty. I can't be wrong. I didn't look carefully just now, so I didn't recognize you. I've seen a few of your works. The Green Apple, Lethal Beauty, and Extreme Youth. I've seen them all. When the group of people heard that there was a big celebrity, the other staff members who were busy with their own work quickly gathered around. Yoon Shurshur was surrounded in an instant. Lisa had never seen such a big scene before. She was so shocked that she stood rooted to the ground. She was a little surprised and asked, "What's going on?" "Mommy is a big celebrity, so I was recognized." Celebrity. For example, movies, television series, actors. Lisa still didn't quite understand. She had never watched a movie before, and basically had no contact with entertainment. Xiaoyi-chen asked, "Do you never watch movies?" Lisa didn't understand. "What exactly is a movie?" Xiaoyi-chen crossed his arms and gently rubbed his chin. Half an hour later, Yoon Shurshur stood outside the theater with the three little guys. She held 3 movie tickets in her hands. However, because it wasn't a holiday, there weren't many people watching the movie. Lisa doesn't even know what a movie is. "I want to take her to watch a movie." Xiaoyi-chen leaned against the window and stared at the title of the movie on the electronic screen. "What should I look at? What style does Lisa like?" Yoon Shurshur asked. Lisa shook her head. "I'm fine with anything." Yu was naturally the least interested one. She sat in her seat with bags of various sizes and held a cup of Coke in boredom. Yoon Shurshur glanced at him and felt gratified. Yu loved cola the most. This had never changed. Xiaoyi-chen suddenly said, "Mommy, didn't you make a guest appearance in a movie called Amnesia Labyrinth? How about an animated movie?" Yoon Shurshur continued. "There's a Disney movie that came out recently, and the reviews are pretty good. I want to watch Amnesia Labyrinth." "Mommy, what are you acting in it?" Yoon Shurshur thought for a moment and said, "I think it's a mystery movie. I heard that I won an award for it." "What award?" "Best Female Lead." After a pause, Yoon Shurshur said angrily, "Also, I'm not a guest star. I'm one of the main leads. It's just that I don't have as many scenes as the male lead." Amnesia Labyrinth was a high-quality mystery movie. It had to be said that Yoon Shurshur's eye for screenplays was getting better and better. This film had won many important awards. There was no mystery genre in the country, but this film had appeared out of nowhere and shattered everyone's expectations. Chapter 3690. It turned out that there were also high-quality detective films in the domestic market. They had high box office sales and a good reputation. Yoon Shurshur played the female lead, Yu Qing, in this detective film. Her brother was suspected of being the murderer. She firmly believed that her brother was not the murderer. She worked with the detective played by Hua Jin to solve the case. In the end, they found out that the real murderer was her twin sister, Yushi. In the ending, Yushi was identified as the murderer. It turned out that a year ago, Yushi was sexually assaulted by a few seniors in school. Unexpectedly, she was pregnant. She did not dare to tell anyone until she had a miscarriage when she was 6 months pregnant. She locked herself in the bathroom. When her brother Yuxian and Yuqing came back, the bathroom wall was covered in blood. Yushi was lying in a pool of blood unconscious. With hatred in her heart, she started to take revenge and created this serial murder. In order to cover up her crime, Yuxian threw the stone himself. In fact, the real murderer was Yushi. However, when the police arrived, Yuqing was handcuffed. The character she was playing was a double identity disorder. Yoon Shurshur was a little surprised. She remembered that when she first took on this movie, she had to play a double identity disorder. However, there were not many cases of double identity disorder in the world. Therefore, she had to figure it out herself. She did not expect that the person closest to her, her son, would also have a double identity disorder. "Let's watch Amnesia Labyrinth then." Xiaoyi-chen bought 4 tickets and waited for the movie to enter the theater. After the movie started, the 4 of them entered the theater. At this time in the afternoon, there were not many people in the theater. Moreover, the movie had been screening for more than a month, and the box office was almost full. Therefore, the screening rate gradually decreased. In a few days, the movie would stop screening. Xiaoqian was very excited. After all, he rarely watched movies and rarely saw his mother's movies on the big screen. Therefore, he was full of anticipation for this movie. In the opening scene of the movie, the female lead, Yu Qing, played by Yun Shirshir, was in the dark. She opened her eyes and saw a pool of sticky blood. She turned around and was shocked to find a corpse. Just as she was about to scream, a hand covered her mouth from behind, and she fainted at once. When she woke up again, she found herself lying in bed with her younger sister, Yuxi, sitting on the edge of the bed. As the plot unfolded, the police received a report that a body had been found on the embankment of the river. A serial murder case gradually surfaced. The plot was intertwined and the scenes were brilliant. There were no superfluous special effects, but the rhythm was just right. Yu Qing had amnesia. Parts of her memory palace were often missing. Yun Shirshir remembered the scene clearly. When she left the library and returned to the dormitory, she realized that the sky had suddenly darkened. When he left the library, it was still morning. However, when he stood at the entrance of the dormitory and looked up again, the sky had suddenly darkened. After asking her roommates, she found out that today was September 10th. But she remembered reading the newspaper in the library on the morning of September 7th. The memory in between had completely disappeared. Chapter 3691. However, when she passed through a small alley and rushed out of the alley, it was already dusk the next day. Her memory was distorted like a maze. What's going on? Xiaoqian's curiosity was piqued. It looks like a fantasy film. Yu furrowed his eyebrows but didn't say anything. He suddenly said, "This is a memory loss." Yun Shirshir looked at him with a complicated expression. "Do you understand?" "Yes." Yu didn't know the plot and continued. "Mommy's character must have a split personality." Yun Shirshir was stunned. The first personality and the second personality don't know about each other's existence. Yu Qing's memory loss isn't actually a case of amnesia. It's just that during that period, her second personality woke up and took over the body. Hence, the first personality didn't have the memory of that period because it was another personality in the body at that time. After a pause, Yu continued, "Actually, I'm guessing that Yu Qing doesn't have a sister. Her twin sister, Yuxi, is her second personality. Without Yuxi, the real victim of sexual assault is Yu Qing herself. The murderer she's been looking for is actually herself. Hence, when she committed the murder, the personality in her body was Yuxi and she didn't know about it at all. Hence, she doesn't know the truth." Yun Shirshir widened her eyes in shock. Halfway through the movie, everyone firmly believed that Yuxi was the real murderer. Without any hints from the plot, Yu could accurately tell the core of the story. That was because Yu really had a split personality. He understood the subtle relationship between Yu Qing and Yuxi. They were close, but they were enemies. At the end of the movie in the mental hospital, the male lead and Jia, played by Hua Jin, came to the ward. Yu Qing sat alone on the bed, hugging her knees. He walked into the room and looked at her with heartache. The movie rewound. It turned out that Yuxi really didn't exist. Back then, because of the sexual assault, because of the twisted hatred and despair, the originally cowardly Yu Qing developed a second personality. The Yuxi she had always seen did not exist. Many times when she spoke to Yuxi in the eyes of others, it was as if she was talking to the air. Her brother thought that she had suffered too much and was sick. Actually, she wasn't sick. It was just that Yu Qing had always thought that Yuxi was her sister, and that she really existed. Back then, the one who was sexually assaulted and had a miscarriage in the bathroom wasn't Yuxi, but herself. The opening scene of the movie was when she switched from her second personality to her first personality. When she woke up and saw the corpse, she was the one who killed it. At that time, her brother happened to return home. When he saw this scene, he immediately rushed over, knocked her out, and personally disposed of the corpse. It was hatred that gave birth to Yuxi and his second personality. In the end, Yu Qing finally pulled herself together and killed the second personality with her own hands. In the illusion, she picked up the dagger and stabbed it into Yuxi's chest. Yuxi disappeared. The second personality disappeared. At the end of the movie, Jia squatted down in front of Yu Qing and hugged her tenderly. Chapter 3692. However, the three little rascals had serious expressions on their faces. Yu suddenly asked, "Mommy, can the second personality, really be killed by the first personality? Then, Yu suddenly asked in a serious tone. If, and I'm just saying if, the first personality of Yu wakes up in my body and kills me, will your heart ache? Yun Shirshir did not know how to answer. If I disappear, mommy, will your heart ache? Could she bear to do that? Would she miss him? At the end of the movie, Yu Qing redeemed himself. Then how could he redeem himself? Yun Shirshir hugged Yu tightly and her heart ached for him. She suddenly asked, why can't they coexist? Just like in the past? Lisa was nervous when she heard this. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. When the four of them left the cinema, Yu looked a little down. Xiaoqian saw this and immediately said, I'll go buy some milk tea. Mommy, wait for me here. As he spoke, he held Lisa's hand and walked towards the milk tea shop. Xiaoqian, why did you choose this movie? Lisa complained as they walked. Xiaoqian felt wronged and said, I've never seen this movie before. I don't know what the plot is. Lisa frowned when she heard this. Her expression was a little solemn. We can't let this drag on. It's better to put an end to it. How do we put an end to it? Xiaoqian said angrily. Are we going to let you use two personalities kill each other? That's too cruel. There's no other way. It's impossible for two personalities to coexist. Sooner or later, he won't be able to take it. Not necessarily. In the past, you used two personalities coexisted. The situation you mentioned didn't happen either. It's different now. Lisa continued. In the past, Yu's second personality had always been suppressed by her first personality. Now, the second personality is in complete control, and the first personality is being suppressed very much. The two personalities have never coexisted before, and only one of them can suppress the other. Can you imagine you use two personalities coexisting? Xiaoqian was stunned. Perhaps it will really be like in the movies. Lisa frowned and said, sooner or later, both personalities will collapse. Do you have the heart to do that? Xiaoqian was speechless. He suddenly said, we can't make the decision for Yu. No matter what decision he makes, I will always be by his side. He then said to the waiter, 4 cups of pudding cheese. Lisa was silent for a while. She looked at Xiaoqian's side profile and said calmly, actually, regardless of whether it's the first personality or the second personality, I also hope that you use two personalities can coexist peacefully. However, dual personalities are very rare. At the moment, there's no treatment for it. This is a little tricky. What about Alice? Does she not have a way to cure it? This is not a normal illness, so it can't be treated with any treatment. Alice doesn't know how to solve this problem. Xiaoqian's heart sank when he heard this. Let's not talk about this for now. Xiaoqian took the milk tea from the waiter and turned to leave. Lisa followed behind him and suddenly thought of something. What if we seal the second personality? We don't have to destroy the second personality. Chapter 3693. Xiaoqian's heart ached as he said, it's the most painful thing to be trapped in a cage all day. When Lisa heard this, she frowned but did not say anything in the end. There was no such thing as empathy between people. This was because the needle was not inserted into one's body, so one would not know how painful it was. They were not Yu, so they did not know how painful it was for a person to be divided into two opposing personalities. When the four of them reached home, Yu locked himself in his room. Xiaoqian wanted to follow him in, but he realized that the door was locked. Yu. He knocked on the door gently. Yu's cold voice came from inside the room. I want to be alone. Xiaoqian retracted his hand. Lisa walked over and said softly, let him be alone. But he was like this when he was on Ashland Island. Sometimes, he likes to lock himself in his room and isolate himself from the world. Xiaoqian sighed. It was dark in the study room. The curtains blocked all the windows so no light could pass through. Yu lay on the sofa and looked at the ceiling. Then he slowly closed his eyes. When he closed his eyes, the world became quiet and still. He imagined himself walking into a door. With a creak, the door slammed shut. Yu looked up and saw a cage in the empty dark room. Inside the cage was a child. This child had the exact same face as him, except that his face was excessively haggard. Yu walked to the door of the cage and looked down at him. Suddenly, He squatted down and looked at him expressionlessly. The child sensed the movement and looked up slightly. However, when he saw Yu Yu's face, his pupils contracted violently. He pounced on the door of the cage and grabbed onto Yu Yu's clothes tightly. "Let me out." Yu Yu frowned slightly. He knew that the child in front of him was his other self. He was Yu Yu's first personality. Back then, Alice's hypnosis tried to seal Yu Yu's memories. However, she did not expect that she would accidentally awaken his second personality. The two personalities clashed violently. Yu Yu's second personality tried to kill Yu Yu's first personality. However, the second personality was wrong. He did not know that the first personality would never be killed. Although the second personality was in control of the body, he knew that sooner or later, this body would be replaced by the first personality. And he too would be like an abandoned, worn-out doll, sealed in a corner with dust. Or he would be killed by the first personality. "She wants to see you very much." Yu Yu looked at the child in the cage and said, "In the end, I can't replace you. Sooner or later, you will take back control of this body. What doesn't belong to me will not be mine. You are the real Yu Yu, and I am just a substitute that can't be considered a substitute." After a pause, Yu Yu said calmly, "But before that, give me some time, okay?" Yu Yu in the cage looked vigilant. "What do you want?" Yu Yu did not want to say anything. Chapter 3694. "What? Return the body to him." The child in the cage was shocked. Yu Yu stood up and curled his lips into a smile. He turned around and left the dark room. When he woke up from his conscious world, Yu Yu opened his eyes and suddenly stood up. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and gently drew the curtains. At this moment the sun was shining brightly. He seemed to have made up his mind. He clenched his fists and did not release them for a long time. At the Gu residence, Xiaobao leaned against the door and looked around. In the bedroom, Chu Ho sat in front of the dressing mirror. Two makeup artists surrounded Chu Ho. One was in charge of doing Chu Ho's hair, and the other was doing the foundation on Chu Ho's face. At the side, long gowns were hanging in the wardrobe, waiting to be tried on. Gu Jinglian stood in front of the wardrobe and compared a few gowns. He was obviously hesitant. Xiaobao tried to sneak in several times to peek, but he was kicked out by Gu Jinglian. The pitiful little guy could only lean against the door and peek. The makeup artist had just finished the foundation. She held Chu Ho's chin and looked at her. No matter how she looked, she was envious. "Your facial features are so good. You look good no matter how you do it." They were in charge of trying on Chu Ho's makeup. The wedding was imminent, but Chu Ho did not seem to care about it. If Gu Jinglian had not forced her to take a day off, she did not know how long she would have delayed it. "President Gu, do you think the bride should wear a Chinese gown or a Western one?" Chu Ho turned to look at the wardrobe and saw all kinds of different styles of gowns. There were different styles of wedding gowns, not to mention the Chinese dragon and phoenix gowns and the Han and Tang imperial gowns. Just the 7 to 8 meters long phoenix tail alone made her scalp tingle. Chu Ho asked carefully, "Do I have the right to decide?" Gu Jinglian did not even look at her. "What do you think?" There shouldn't be any." "All right." Chu Ho shrugged helplessly and sat down obediently. Gu Jinglian picked up a dragon and phoenix robe and imagined it. Then he made a solemn decision. "Chinese style. All right, how about I put on some peach blossom makeup?" The peach blossom makeup paired with the dragon and phoenix robe was absolutely stunning. Coupled with Chu Ho's exquisite foundation, she must be very beautiful. Gu Jinglian didn't know anything about peach blossom makeup, so he said, "I only look at the effect." "All right." The makeup artists were trembling with fear, afraid that they would miss anything. When Gu Jinglian got married, the makeup artists he hired were all high-end and expensive. Of course, when the two makeup artists came to try on his makeup, Gu Jinglian also tried to be polite before resorting to violence. "If you don't look good, don't stay in this line of work." How terrifying. When they were first assigned the task, they did not expect that it would be to test the makeup of the Gu family's young master's fiancé. They thought that if they did not look good and offended the Gu family, they might not be able to continue in this line of work. Therefore, they put on makeup seriously and meticulously. Just the foundation makeup alone took an hour. Even when they used a magnifying glass to look at it, they could not see a single pore. A person's potential was indeed limitless. With the help of the supernatural makeup skills, Chuho looked at herself in the mirror. Although she only put on a layer of foundation makeup, she looked like a flawless porcelain doll. Her skin was creamy and even more delicate than a baby's skin. Just the loose powder alone was spread on 2 layers. Then it was time for the eye makeup. Chapter 3695. Gu Jinglian walked over to take a look, only to see that they were only at the eye makeup stage. He pursed his lips in displeasure and said, "Why is it so slow?" The makeup artists were trembling. Was it slow? Wasn't it all for the sake of looking good? Furthermore, it takes this long for a woman to put on makeup. Gu Jinglian asked suspiciously, "Does it take that long?" Of course. Chuho was a little impatient. "Get out." Gu Jinglian's face darkened when he heard this. "Why should I get out? What are you doing here while I'm putting on makeup? Aren't you just here to see the effect? I'll let you have a look when the makeup is done." The makeup artist added, "It takes a long time to put on makeup. After the makeup is done, we still have to wait for the hair to be tied up and for the gown to be changed. It won't be too late for you to have a look when the makeup is done." With such a big devil in the room, they didn't even have the courage to fight. Gu Jinglian was chased out of the room. Xiao Bao, who had been peeking at the door, bumped into Gu Jinglian. The father and son looked at each other. Xiao Bao laughed gloatingly. "Ha ha ha. Dad, you've been chased out too," Gu Jinglian said proudly. "What do you mean by chased out?" Although it was similar to being chased out. However, it was too embarrassing to be ridiculed by Xiao Bao. Thud. Gu Jinglian couldn't take it anymore and punched the little guy. At this moment, Uncle Fu carried a very heavy box to the master bedroom. Gu Jinglian saw him and couldn't help but ask, "What are you carrying?" The box was red and gaudy. He didn't know what Uncle Fu had brought back. Uncle Fu said, "Oh," and quickly said, "These are things for the wedding room." Xiao Bao got excited when he heard that they were going to decorate the room. "What are they?" "Balloons, ribbons, silk ribbons, and some lights." Xiao Bao got even more excited when he heard this. He pestered Gu Jinglian and said, "Dad, let's decorate the wedding room together." "Okay?" Gu Jinglian snorted. Lame. When Xiao Bao heard this, he lowered his head in disappointment and looked at him pitifully. Seeing that Gu Jinglian was being arrogant again, Butler Fu immediately pretended to have a sore back and said bitterly, "Old master, my back is hurting again. Help me carry these things to the master bedroom." Seeing this, little treasure volunteered. "Let me carry you, let me carry you." "No, dads," Gu Jinglian's father. Gu Jinglian glanced at him, walked over and carried the box in his arms. Butler Fu relaxed a lot and said to Gu Jinglian, "One person isn't enough. Old master, you can be my assistant." All right. He had wanted to wait at the door and wait for Chuho to finish his makeup so that he could see how beautiful his bride was. However, looking at the situation, he was afraid that the makeup wouldn't be done in such a short time. Thus, Gu Jinglian carried the box and went to the master bedroom with Uncle Fu and Xiao Bao to decorate. The stylist finally heaved a sigh of relief when the footsteps outside the door left. Chuho yawned. Her lips twitched when she heard their sighs of relief. "What's the matter? Why are you sighing?" The stylists looked at each other cautiously and immediately crowded around her. "Bride, do you know that many stylists in the capital don't dare to take on this business? Why wouldn't they dare to take on it?" Chapter 3696. Because the man you're marrying is Gu. Young Master Gu. They did not even dare to call him by his name. Chuho's eyebrows twitched. What's wrong with Gu Jinglian? Seeing that this bride did not seem to have any awareness at all, they could not help but gasp. "Bride, do you know how scary your man's reputation is in Beijing? There's a saying in the business world that one would rather offend the Mu family than the Gu family. After all, the Gu family is from the underworld." Chuho felt that they had demonized Gu Jinglian too much. Actually, Gu Jinglian is not as scary as you make him out to be. The Gu family is also not as scary as you think. At least after interacting with them, Chuho felt that other than Gu Jinglian, everyone in the Gu family was quite easy to get along with. Perhaps there was no difference between the underworld and the underworld. She felt that the Gu family was like the chivalrous warriors of the underworld in ancient times. They had a heroic style, straightforward and single-minded. In fact, they were quite simple people. That was Gu Jinglian. He's just a little eccentric. Actually, he's not as scary as you think. The few of them looked at each other, still on tenterhooks. I've always felt that marrying a man like young Master Gu requires a lot of courage. Chu-ho looked at herself in the mirror and did not say much. Although the makeup process was very boring, she did not like to talk too much about her personal matters with outsiders. She knew very well what kind of person Gu Jinglian was. She also knew very well what kind of man she was marrying. Since she had decided to get married, she had already mentally prepared herself for what would happen after the wedding. However, she could not see through Gu Jinglian. If the decision to get the marriage certificate was purely for Xiao Bao, then why was Gu Jinglian holding the wedding now? Originally, Chu-ho had said that the wedding would be simple. There was no need for a big show or a grand wedding. They just needed to go through the procedures. However, Gu Jinglian said, "How can my wedding be casual?" It had to be said that Gu Jinglian was quite particular. Either they didn't have a wedding or they had to have a grand wedding. Anyway, the Gu family was not short of money or manpower. No matter what, they could not lose to the Mu family in this wedding. At the very least, they had to be on par with the Mu family. He was a typical male chauvinist. Even if he treated others unfairly, he would never treat his woman unfairly. Mu Yaja had held such a grand wedding for his wife. How could his woman be wronged? Even though Chu-ho felt that there was nothing wrong with a simple wedding, Gu Jinglian felt that it was a once-in-a-lifetime wedding, so it couldn't be done so carelessly. Uncle Fu also came over to persuade her, saying that this was the only wedding in a woman's life. No matter what, it had to be done properly. Chu-ho was afraid of trouble, so Uncle Fu immediately patted his chest and promised that she would not have to worry about the wedding. There are so many people in the Gu clan, do you still need to worry about them? When the time comes, you just have to sit there, put on your makeup, put on your gown and follow the procedure. Chu-ho only agreed after hearing this. Once she agreed, Uncle Fu started to get busy. First, he started to think about whether the wedding would be Chinese or Western. Chapter 3697. It was up to Chu-ho whether she should wear a wedding gown or a dragon and phoenix gown. However, Chu-ho said that it did not matter. Uncle Fu immediately agreed that they should just go with the tradition. After walking around the hotels, Uncle Fu was not satisfied with any of them. After picking and choosing, he felt that no high-end hotel was as pleasing to the eye as the Gu residence. Hence, they decided to hold the wedding at the Gu residence. It had to be said that the Gu residence was really big. It was not a problem to hold dozens of tables in the courtyard. The guest list was drawn up. There would be 10 people at each table, but there would only be about 50 tables. Those who came were close friends who had business dealings with the Gu family. Those who had received invitations from the Gu family were all honored guests. After the wedding venue was confirmed, the tricky problem was, in a normal wedding, the woman would be married out of the bride's house. However, Chu-ho did not have a maternal family. This was a big problem. Without a maternal family, where was the best place to get married? The group of people was worried. Uncle Fu usually stayed at the Gu residence, but he also had houses in other places. Uncle Fu suggested that the woman could get married out of his house. Anyway, Chu-ho's household register is under my name. No matter what, she can be considered half a daughter. Since she is already married, she can treat my house as her maternal family and get married out of my house. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he also felt that this was a good idea. Uncle Fu's house was not far from the Gu residence. It was about 10 kilometers away. Chu-ho did not care about anything, as if she was a hands-off shopkeeper. After all, she did not know the rules of a wedding, so she simply left it to Uncle Fu to handle. In the master bedroom, Xiao Bao was holding a balloon and blowing it. The balloon was expanding bit by bit. However, he did not dare to blow it up too much, for fear that it would explode if the balloon was too full. Here, Uncle Fu, tie a knot. Xiao Bao handed the pitifully small balloon to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu took a look and clicked his tongue. This balloon is too small. It won't do. What happened? Look at how big the balloon in your father's hand is. Xiao Bao looked at the balloon in Gu Jinglian's hand, and saw that the balloon that Gu Jinglian had blown up with the air pump was 10 times his size. What a big balloon! Gu Jinglian said disdainfully. Your balloons are useless. Why? I can't fly. How is this possible? Xiao Bao threw the balloon in his hand toward the ceiling, but he didn't expect the balloon to fall down so quickly. What happened? Xiao Bao looked dejectedly at the balloon in Gu Jinglian's hand. He tied a ribbon to it and rolled the ribbon with the back of his knife. He gently loosened the ribbon and the balloon floated up to the ceiling. The balloon was filled with hydrogen, and Xiao Bao directly blew it with his small mouth. Naturally, it couldn't float. I also want to use this thing to fight. Xiao Bao pointed at the air pump. Uncle Fu suddenly said, Xiao Bao, shall we compete? Let's see who blows the balloon bigger. When Xiao Bao heard that they wanted to compete, he nodded his head vigorously. Hence, Xiao Bao and Uncle Fu each took a balloon and blew it vigorously. Gu Jinglian glanced at it and suddenly laughed sinisterly. He placed a deflated balloon behind Xiao Bao and started blowing it with the air pump. Xiao Bao was focused on the balloon and didn't know that the balloon behind him was getting bigger and bigger. Uncle Fu was shocked when he saw this. He saw Gu Jinglian holding the air pump and pumping it vigorously. The balloon was getting bigger and bigger. There was a sound. Chapter 3698. The balloon exploded at once. The balloon exploded behind Xiao Bao. The huge commotion frightened Xiao Bao so much that he jumped up from the bed. He was so shocked that he loosened his grip. The air in the balloon immediately escaped and poured into Xiao Bao's mouth. Xiao Bao was stunned as he drank the balloon's air. He loosened his grip and the deflated balloon immediately flew out. It flew around the room and fell to the ground. When Gu Jinglian saw Xiao Bao's intense reaction, he burst out laughing. Ha ha ha! Xiao Bao still did not understand what was going on. He turned around and looked at the remains of the balloon on the floor. Then he looked at the air pump in Gu Jinglian's hand and suddenly understood what was going on. You did it on purpose. Xiao Bao stood up and pointed angrily at Gu Jinglian. He was so frightened that his eyes turned red. Gu Jinglian's face returned to its cold and indifferent expression. No, you're just a coward. You! Xiao Bao pounced at Gu Jinglian angrily. He picked up the balloon on the floor and hit it at Gu Jinglian's head. Gu Jinglian grabbed the balloon from Xiao Bao's hand and hit it at his head. Thump! 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 Xiao Bao's head was hit quite a few times. The father and son wrestled together and started fooling around. Uncle Fu did not know whether to laugh or cry, but it was nothing. As the father and son played around, Uncle Fu minded his own business and hit the balloon. After more than an hour, someone knocked on the door. Master Gu, the bride's makeup is done. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he said, Oh! When Xiao Bao heard this, he was extremely excited. I want to take a look. Xiao Bao nimbly got up from the ground. When Gu Jinglian saw this, he reached out his large palm and clasped Xiao Bao's head, pushing him to the side. He stood up himself and walked towards Chu Ho's room. Xiao Bao also followed. The father and son walked to the door of the room. From afar through the crack of the door, they saw a dazzling red. It was incomparably dazzling. Gu Jinglian's eyes immediately focused. Xiao Bao pushed the door open and saw Chu Ho standing in front of the full-length mirror. He was wearing a long dragon and phoenix robe. Just by looking at his back, one could see that he had a magnificent bearing. His 7 to 8 meter long phoenix tail spread out in a long stretch. Gu Jinglian was stunned. The beautiful scene in front of him made him forget what he should do for a moment. Chu Ho was very tall. Hence, the long dragon and phoenix robe made her body look even more well-proportioned and slender. She was incomparably tall and slender. She wore a golden phoenix coronet on her head. Beautiful tassels hung down to her temples. Her exquisite makeup and seductive eyes were like silk. Especially the fiery red flower between her brows and her red lips. She was dazzlingly beautiful. Even though Chu Ho had a good foundation, even without makeup, she was much more beautiful than the average woman with makeup. However, there was still a big difference between makeup and no makeup. Thick black eyelids, thick and long eyelashes, a perfect amount of blush, fair and translucent, delicate and smooth skin. It was actually a stunning sight. Wow! So beautiful! Xiao Bao walked over carefully, trying not to step on Chu Ho's phoenix tail. Gu Jinglian also came back to his senses and walked into the room. Chu Ho's back was facing him. She was still looking at the mirror and examining her makeup. Even she herself was stunned by her flawless makeup. It was too beautiful. This was not makeup, it was simply a disguise. Chapter 3699. So beautiful. So beautiful. Xiaobao jumped around Chuho. She was breathtaking. Gu Jinglian stopped behind Chuho. He calmed himself down and suppressed his emotions. Pretending to be calm, he said, "Turn around and let me have a look." When Chuho heard this, she did not expect Gu Jinglian to be there too. She turned around in surprise. However, when she turned around just now, the sunlight in the room was overshadowed in an instant. The whole room seemed to be enveloped by the light emitted from her body. Chuho's fair and flawless face was filled with shades of black, red, pink and white. The black was naturally due to her thick black eyeliner and her curly eyelashes. The pink was due to her pink cheeks. The blush was just right. It was neither too bright nor too plain. Her high nose bridge and bright red lips made her look as graceful as jade. Her bearing was extraordinary. She had a noble and compelling aura that could not be looked directly at. Gu Jinglian's Adam's apple bobbed slightly as he stared fixedly at her. Even his heart stopped beating, afraid that he would disturb her beauty. Chuho saw that he was staring at her motionlessly and felt a little uneasy instead. "What's the matter? Do I look good?" She was not confident in her own taste in beauty. When she looked at herself in the mirror earlier, she felt that this outfit was quite beautiful. She did not know how Gu Jinglian would look at it. Hence, she asked this question to test his opinion. After her test, Gu Jinglian finally came back to his senses. He was a little startled as he grunted, However, in Chuhi's eyes, his hesitation due to his stunning beauty seemed to be hesitation and reluctance to force an answer. "If you don't think I look good, just say so." She was obviously not satisfied with his reaction. At least, she did not see amazement in his eyes. Gu Jinglian said awkwardly, "Didn't I say that I look good? Look at how reluctant you are to answer. No one forced you." Gu Jinglian frowned. Before he could say anything, Xiaobao jumped up and down beside Chuho and said with a smile, "Mommy is the prettiest. If Daddy doesn't think she's pretty, then it's Daddy's fault. Anyway, Xiaobao thinks she's pretty. Why don't Mommy marry Xiaobao?" Gu Jinglian's face immediately turned green. What nonsense was this little fellow spouting? Although this child's words carried no harm, but at such a young age, he actually had ideas about his woman. Xiaobao obviously did not notice Gu Jinglian's darkening expression behind him. Chuho could not help but laugh. "Even if she marries you, she'll have to wait until our Xiaobao grows up." Xiaobao tilted his head. "When will Xiaobao grow up?" "When Xiaobao grows up, I'll be old too. Mommy will never grow old. Even if Mommy grows old, Xiaobao won't despise you." Gu Jinglian's eyebrows twitched. This son of his was really good at sweet-talking. Chuho said lightly, "Someone is not as good as his own son when it comes to sweet-talking." Gu Jinglian snorted disdainfully. The stylist beside him said uneasily, "President Gu, are you satisfied with this one? Do you want to try something else?" Without waiting for Gu Jinglian to speak, Chuho complained, "Isn't this headdress too heavy? It's making my neck sore." Chapter 3700. However, the headwear on Chuho's head was made of genuine gold. Hence it had a certain weight to it. It was no wonder that his neck was sore from the weight. Gu Jinglian said, "I'll take this. It looks pretty good. You don't have to try anything else." Chuho was a little unhappy. "Can you change the headwear? This is too heavy. This dragon and phoenix gown should be paired with this kind of headwear. Only then will it have the most aura. Anything else will be a little cliché," the stylist added. Chuho sighed and gave in. "All right, I'll take this one." Chuho turned back to the dressing mirror and said to them, "Since we've decided on this gown, let's change out of it. It's uncomfortable to wear it." Of course, the nicer the gown, the better. It'll definitely be uncomfortable. However, this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. It'll be a precious memory if it's grand. Gu Jinglian was about to walk out of the room when Chuho said faintly, "Who said this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding? Who knows, maybe I'll have a second one." These words undoubtedly ignited a gunpowder keg. Gu Jinglian turned around abruptly and said coldly, "I dare you to say that again." Chuho said indignantly, "Fine, I'll say it again. Who said this is a once-in-a-lifetime wedding? Who knows, maybe there'll be a second or third one." Gu Jinglian's expression became even uglier. This woman was clearly provoking him. When the stylist saw this, she immediately tried to smooth things over. Yes, of course there'll be a second or third one. Before she could finish speaking, Gu Jinglian heard this and became even more displeased. The few of them who didn't know how to read a person's mood actually agreed. The stylist saw that Gu Jinglian's expression had suddenly turned ugly. She quickly explained, "In the future, when it's your 40th or 50th wedding anniversary, you can also hold a ceremony. For example, a silver wedding, a golden wedding, and even a diamond wedding." Gu Jinglian frowned. "There's such a thing?" Chu Ho snorted coldly. "There's a lot of things to say. It's said that there are proposals before marriage, but I've never seen anyone take the initiative to propose." "Ah, Master Gu didn't propose to you?" the stylist asked cautiously. Chu Ho nodded. "No." Gu Jinglian walked up to her and sized her up. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Do you want to propose to me?" Chu Ho crossed his arms in front of his chest, but did not express his opinion. Gu Jinglian was in the same position as her. He crossed his arms and looked at her. "How do you want me to propose?" "It's too late to propose now." As Chu Ho spoke, he turned to look at the dressing mirror and removed the gold ornaments on his head. The stylist immediately said, "It's not too late to propose now. As long as it's before the wedding, the proposal will count. Generally speaking, when proposing, the man should kneel down on one knee and prepare some romantic surprises." Gu Jinglian's expression was slightly gloomy. "Kneel?" Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes. "You need to kneel to propose?" "Proposing, as the name suggests, is to ask the woman to marry you," Chu Ho said again. "This is what you call a proposal. Kneeling down on one knee is to show your sincerity." Gu Jinglian smiled. "Dream on." Seeing this, Xiaobao suddenly said, "I've seen how they propose on TV." He found a jewelry box from somewhere and held it in his hands. He knelt down on one knee sincerely and said sincerely to Chu Ho, "Beautiful lady, I swear to God that I will love and protect you for the rest of my life. May I ask if you will marry me?" Bang. Chapter 3701. Xiaobao's head was about to explode. Gu Jinglian grabbed him by the ear and gritted his teeth. "Do you want to die?" Xiaobao hugged his head and mumbled with reddened eyes. "Daddy is bullying me." "Yes, I'm beating you up." Gu Jinglian pulled him by the ear and dragged him out of the door. "Let's go." Xiaobao whimpered as he was dragged out by Gu Jinglian. They bickered as they walked out. "Daddy, you're too violent. I wonder if you'll bully mommy in the future if I hand her over to you." "Shut up. As a man, you have to be gentle with women and children. Don't you understand this?" Bam. It was another knock on the head. "Ugh. Talk more nonsense and I'll twist your head off." Bam. The door slammed shut. Chu Ho stared blankly at the sound of the father and son leaving. After a while, he came back to his senses and burst out laughing. What a pair of clowns. Gu Jinglian carried Xiaobao into the bedroom. At the same time, Uncle Fu had already pulled up the curtains. The bed was a large antique bed with carved flowers. With the red curtains as embellishments, it looked as if they had returned to the ancient times. There were also a lot of balloons that floated to the ceiling. At a glance, the originally old-fashioned room looked a little more romantic. Gu Jinglian threw Xiaobao onto the bed like a ball, and handed him a bunch of balloons and an air pump. He instructed, "Fill the balloons with air." Xiaobao asked righteously, "How do I get paid?" 1 yuan per balloon. "That's too cheap." Xiaobao threw the air pump away. "I'm not doing it." Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps outside the door. The door was pushed open and Lin Shi walked in with her school bag. "I'm back from school." Before he could finish his sentence, Gu Linshi's eyes widened in surprise when he saw the decorations in the room. "Oh my God, it's so beautiful." Uncle Fu walked over and took Lin Shi's bag. "Lin Shi, you're home? Do you have homework today?" "I finished it in school." Lin Shi saw a balloon on the bed and walked over. He picked it up and looked at it. He then looked at the balloon on the ceiling and asked, "Do you need help?" Uncle Fu nodded. "Yes, we're lacking manpower right now." "All right, I'll do it." Lin Shi obediently sat down on the edge of the bed, picked up the air pump and studied it for a while. Soon he understood. After a while, he shot 3 or 4 balloons, tied them to a ribbon, and floated to the ceiling. Gu Jinglian snorted and scolded Xiaobao. Look at how obedient your brother is. Xiaobao pointed at him and complained. Daddy uses child labor. Bang! A knock was heard. Xiaobao said tearfully, Daddy is abusing children. Bang! A knock was heard. Gu Jinglian said coldly, You dare to say that again? Xiaobao looked at his tightly clenched fist and retreated in fear. Gu Jinglian had just put down his fist when Xiaobao said indignantly, Daddy is a super bad guy. Gu Jinglian slowly turned around. What? The room was shaking. Even though they were a room apart, Chu Ho could hear the commotion in the master bedroom. He only heard Xiaobao's cries. Then there was dead silence. Gu Jinglian, this guy. He must be bullying our son again. Chapter 3702. Putting on makeup took a long time, but removing it was very fast. After the stylist removed Chu Ho's makeup, they did a series of skincare treatments for her. Your skin condition isn't very good, the stylist said as they applied a facial mask for her. Do you usually take care of your skin? I don't. Don't you use skincare products? I don't. Oh my God. The stylists looked at each other in dismay. If you don't take care of your skin at all, it's really unbelievable that your skin is in such a state. Chu Ho said, I usually only wash my face with water. I don't really use facial cleanser. Actually, your skin condition is very young. Compared to other girls your age, your skin condition is very good. It's just that you don't hydrate your skin and it's a little dehydrated. After putting on makeup, it will be very dry. How about this? We'll give you a few facial masks. You can apply them every night. Chu Ho took the facial masks and looked at them. She didn't know what brand they were, but since they were recommended by professional stylists, they should be effective. Okay, thank you. Before she could finish speaking, the stylists gathered in front of her with dazzling smiles on their faces. They revealed extremely sincere expressions and said in an almost begging tone, If Master Gu asks about today's service, please give us full marks. Otherwise, if Master Gu isn't satisfied, we're done for. So they gave her the facial masks to bribe her. Worried that she wasn't satisfied with their service, Gu Jinglian asked about it and offended them. Hey, I got it. The stylists immediately thanked her profusely and looked as if they couldn't wait to kneel down and kowtow to her. After they packed up their cosmetics and left, they looked like they were about to shed tears of gratitude. Chu Ho was a little confused. Was Gu Jinglian that scary? Looking at them, they looked like they were about to cry. Chu Ho put the skincare products they gave her into the drawer and walked to the master bedroom. When she opened the door, she saw Lin Shi and Xiaobao playing around with balloons on the bed. Uncle Fu was putting up flowers for the window. She glanced around and saw Gu Jinglian sitting on the sofa, cutting paper. Looking at the room again, it was already more than half decorated. The red curtains were draped over the bed, and the bright and clean windows were pasted with the word Shi on the window. These window flowers were probably the work of Gu Jinglian. Chu Ho looked surprised. You know how to cut paper? When Gu Jinglian heard the voice, he raised his head and saw that it was Chu Ho. He subconsciously threw paper cut to the side and said softly, I don't know how to. When Xiaobao saw this, he immediately got up from the bed and shouted, Daddy cut it. He refuses to admit it because he feels ashamed. Oh. Gu Jinglian glared at him fiercely. Xiaobao was so scared that he immediately shut up. Uncle Fu had just finished putting up a piece of window decoration. When he saw Chu Ho, he immediately smiled and said, Actually, Master is the most enthusiastic about decorating the bridal chamber. He looks indifferent on the surface, but in fact, so many things about the wedding are planned by him. Uncle Fu. Gu Jinglian stopped him. Shut up. Don't talk too much. When Chu Ho heard this, his lips curled into a smile. He laughed and said, You still feel embarrassed? However, I seem to have heard someone say that he doesn't care about the wedding and just leaves it to others. I didn't expect someone to be so attentive to the wedding. It looks like he's looking forward to the wedding. Gu Jinglian's handsome face immediately turned red. Chapter 3703. Chu Ho asked again, Then who cut these window trimmings? Gu Jinglian made a prompt decision. Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu and Xiaobao said in unison, Old Master cut them. Dad cut them. Gu Jinglian was speechless. Chuho clutched her stomach and laughed. Ha ha ha. Why didn't you come up with a confession before lying? Gu Jinglian suddenly got up and left the room with a gloomy expression. After he left, Xiaobao and Lin Shi looked at each other and burst out laughing. Uncle Fu was also speechless. Old master is two-faced. He has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. He obviously did it with his heart, but he still won't admit it. Lin Shi added, there's a saying that goes, you'll suffer if you want to keep up appearances. I think Dad really wants to keep up appearances. Xiaobao nodded heavily. That's right, that's right. Dad is so awkward. Chuho looked disgusted, but in fact she felt warm inside. In fact, how could she not know that these window trimmings were cut by Gu Jinglian? She was asking the obvious. She knew that other than Gu Jinglian, no one else could cut such beautiful window trimmings. Chuho walked to the table and casually picked up the window trimmings that Gu Jinglian had cut. She looked at them carefully. The trimmings were neat and the texture was simple. She could tell that Gu Jinglian had carefully cut them out bit by bit with a knife. Chuho couldn't help but smile. Her fingertips gently caressed the half-trimmed window trimmings. At night, Gu Jinglian sat in the study. As usual, he took a shower and read a book before going to bed. Chuho walked to the study after her shower. She saw Gu Jinglian sitting at the study table. She smiled and walked over. Gu Jinglian heard the footsteps, but he did not look up. He continued to hold the book and read it carefully. However, on the surface he could not read a single word. He did not turn a page for a long time. Chuho stood behind him. She followed his gaze and looked at his book. Even after she had finished reading, he still did not turn the page. You're such a meticulous reader. He paused for a moment before continuing. Did you read it word by word? Gu Jinglian finally looked up and glanced at her, but his eyes were extremely deep. Chuho snatched the book from his hand and turned a page. She was about to walk to the sofa and sit down to read it seriously when Gu Jinglian suddenly reached out his arm and wrapped it around her waist, pulling her into his arms. Chuho was caught off guard and fell into his arms. She looked up and met Gu Jinglian's deep eyes. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and stared at her face. His gaze sized her up inch by inch. His slender fingers gently caressed her cheek. Her skin was exquisite and flawless. Felt unexpectedly good to the touch. Gu Jinglian suddenly lowered his head and kissed her gently on the lips. For some reason he wanted to kiss her. However, unlike other men, he did not kiss her impatiently. At first, he only kissed her lips lightly. He kissed her bit by bit but was not in a hurry to go deeper. Chuho instinctively pushed his shoulders away. His kiss was too sudden. She was not even mentally prepared for it. However, no matter how much strength she used, Gu Jinglian did not budge. No matter how hard she pushed, he did not move at all. He was like a boulder. What are you doing? Her face was slightly red and her eyes were angry. Chapter 3704. I'm kissing you. After Gu Jinglian finished speaking, his thin lips pressed down on hers again. This time the kiss was much gentler. He gently covered her lips with his, sucking on her lips and rubbing them gently. It was so gentle that Chuho gradually got used to this kiss and did not resist anymore. She looked up and saw Gu Jinglian's deep eyes. On the window there was the bright red word she. She seemed to be able to imagine what it would be like on the day of their wedding. However, she could not imagine what it would be like on the day of their wedding. What kind of clothes would he be wearing, walking in front of her and holding her hand? On that day, would he still be as serious as usual with a meticulous smile on his face? Or would he say one thing and hold her hand disapprovingly, as indifferent as he had always been? She could not imagine it. She had not even thought that she would have such a day. To be able to become husband and wife with such a man. When she first heard the name Gu Jinglian, besides feeling unfamiliar, there was also an inexplicable hostility. This name resounded like thunder in the ears of the Interpol. As a spy by his side, she had more contact with this man and gained a deeper understanding of him. He was ruthless, cruel, and unscrupulous. He could always casually force his opponents into a desperate situation and leave calmly. At that time, she would never have thought that she would become his wife a few years later. She still remembered that this man had made it clear that he would not marry and have children like other men. She did not expect that they would have such a cute and obedient son, Xiao Bao. She also did not expect that she would hold a wedding with him. Gu Jinglian. Chuho suddenly spoke. Yes. Do you really want to marry me? Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. Why are you suddenly asking this question? Didn't you say before that you would never get married in this lifetime? Chuho continued. Don't tell me that our wedding is just a game to you? Or is it just compensation for Xiao Bao? Gu Jinglian's eyes flickered. He looked away but did not answer immediately. Chuho held his face and forced him to turn his head to look at him. He asked again. Marriage means that you will be together for the rest of your life. Are you willing to spend a lifetime with me? Gu Jinglian pursed his thin lips, unable to speak. Chuho was a little annoyed. Are you sincere in wanting to be with me? Of course. Then, Chuho finally asked the question in his heart. Do you like me? She didn't dare to talk about love. She also didn't dare to imagine that a proud and arrogant man like Gu Jinglian would tie his life to a woman. However, even if it was just a little bit, this love was much deeper and heavier than the love of other men. Gu Jinglian stared at her for a while and suddenly asked, Do you like me? He asked with an awkward expression. When Chuho heard this, he smiled and said, I like it. She decided not to hide it anymore. Perhaps the initial decision to settle down in the Gu family was purely to give Xiao Bao a home. Chapter 3705. However, after getting used to life in the Gu residence, Chuho realized that she had some special feelings for the Gu family. These feelings were too subtle. If one was not serious, it would not be easy to notice. The feeling of home. The warmth of home. This feeling was unprecedented. Even though she still did not accept Gu Jinglian wholeheartedly and only regarded him as Xiao Bao's father, a family member, but not a husband. However, during that trip to North Africa, she ignored all dangers and sneaked into North Africa to find Gu Jinglian. She shuttled between gunfire. At the border of life and death, hell on earth. Only then did she realize that she had to reevaluate her feelings for Gu Jinglian. Did she love him? Did she like him? If she did not love or like him, then why did she risk her life just to find him? Was it purely for Xiao Bao? Did she not want Xiao Bao to lose his biological father? Could she not bear to see Xiao Bao suffer the pain and injury of being separated from his flesh and blood? But more than once at night, she asked herself if she would still go to North Africa and look for Xiao Bao if it were not for him. The answer was yes. Even if she faced death, she would find him and bring him home. Although she had never liked a man and had never been in any relationship, she did not know what it felt like to like and love someone. Her understanding of love was that she could not leave and did not want to leave. She liked him. She must have liked him. Otherwise, why would she risk her life for such a man? Chuho recognized her feelings and her heart. Therefore, when Gu Jinglian asked her, she admitted that she liked him. She had always dared to love and hate. She did not adhere to the eternal rules of men, who should take the initiative, and women who should be reserved. She liked him. It was a fact that could not be changed. She just said that she loved him. There was nothing to hide. In this life, one should not make a choice that they would regret and say something that they would regret. If they said it and did it, then they would not regret it. I like you. Chuho smiled calmly. Gu Jinglian listened carefully. A Chuho like you. Even though he had hurt her, he had also given her joy. Love no hate. When Gu Jinglian heard this answer, he was slightly startled, but he smiled. He understood her character. She was open and honest, and did not hide her feelings at all. She was straightforward and natural. This was also one of the reasons he liked her. What about you? You haven't answered me yet. Chuho raised his eyebrows. I don't want you to marry me. The ceremony is just for Xiao Bao's feelings. If you like me, you like me. If you don't like me, you don't like me. You're not even afraid of death. Don't you have the courage to answer this question? Gu Jinglian asked. Is the answer really that important? Of course. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he laughed. He was the same as Chuho. When he was young, the cold environment he grew up in had created a cold personality. He was also very indifferent to relationships. He had developed a character that would not give up until he achieved his goal. He had had many women, but Chuho was the most special one. Chapter 3706. It was not that he did not have women who were prettier and prettier than her. There were all kinds of women around him, but Chu-ho was special. It was not just because of her identity as Xiao Bao's biological mother. She seemed to be the only woman who was willing to risk her life for him. Was he touched? He was afraid not. He was a proud man like Gu Jinglian. How could he be touched by such a ridiculous feeling and tie himself up for the rest of his life? For Xiao Bao? Similarly, he would never bet his life on a man for the sake of a child. It was only now that he understood that there was no need for a reason to like someone. Cute? Gentle? Flirtatious? She did not have any of these qualities that a woman should have. However, it still proved that there was no need for a reason to like someone. He was willing to be with her for the rest of his life. She might have many flaws, but it did not stop him from liking her. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and gently kissed her lips. Their lips pressed together as he murmured, "If this feeling of wanting to be with you is like, then?" He did not continue speaking and deepened the kiss. The answer that followed was self-evident, though. A man like him did not like to show off. Usually, such a proud man would keep everything in his heart. Chu-ho could understand, though. In his kiss, she seemed to have heard his answer. Like, if you like, then be together for the rest of your life. A lifetime was short, but it was long. Only they knew in their hearts that this choice was not for Xiao Bao but for themselves. This was also one of the reasons why Gu Jinglian did not hate Yun Tianyu for the incident in North Africa. Given his vengeful personality, that incident in North Africa would probably become an unforgettable barrier between the Gu and Mu families. However, even though he had lost Werther, he recognized his own heart. Chu-ho originally did not want to take wedding photos, but Xiao Bao insisted on it. Just as well she could take a family photo as well. Sometimes, when the kindergarten held activities, the homeroom teacher would ask for a family photo. Xiao Bao couldn't take it out, so he could only say that he couldn't find the family photo. It just so happened that he had such an opportunity this time. Since Xiao Bao had already said so, Chu-ho had no reason to refuse. After the wedding photo shoot, Uncle Fu suddenly took out a photo of her and gave it to the Gu family tattoo artist. There were 5 tattoo artists in the Gu residence. The tattoos and totems on the bodies of the several thousand disciples of the Gu family were all handled by the tattoo artists employed by the Gu residence. The photo that Uncle Fu took away was a photo of Chu-ho wearing a traditional Chinese and phoenix robe and wearing a phoenix coronet. The tattoo artist took it and designed a heavy-colored tattoo. Chu-ho did not know about this. However, a few days later, Chu-ho finally found something fishy about Gu Jinglian. He had an additional tattoo on his body. That night, when she entered the room, she happened to see Gu Jinglian changing into a bathrobe. She vaguely noticed a strange mark on his left chest. She took the chance when he was not paying attention and lifted his bathrobe, only to see her face. "What is this?" Gu Jinglian waved her hand away with an unnatural expression. "It's nothing. I saw it." Chu-ho frowned. "That's my face." Chapter 3707. She held up a fan and covered half of her face, revealing only her eyes. The tassels of the phoenix coronet dangled from her hair. After the tattoo artist's design, it was made into a multicolored tattoo on his chest. Similarly, it was the position of his heart. Chu-ho was stunned. He got a tattoo? How did he get a tattoo? And it was her portrait? Chu-ho was so curious that she wanted to tug at his bathrobe. "Let me see." Gu Jinglian slapped her hand away. "No. Let me see. It's my portrait after all. Don't I have the right to see it?" Gu Jinglian said awkwardly. "No, you don't have the right." Chu-he was displeased. In one go, she grabbed Gu Jinglian's collar and threw him onto the bed. She straddled him and pinned his hands down with the back of her hand. In an instant, she tore open the bathrobe. When she saw the totem tattooed on his chest, she was stunned. "You're..." Chu-ho furrowed her eyebrows. "What does this mean?" "Nothing. You wouldn't get this tattoo for no reason, right?" Chu-ho smiled and asked, "Do you also think that this photo of mine looks especially good?" "Shut up. Or do you want to engrave my most beautiful image in your heart forever?" "Shut up. You've got a tattoo but you don't let me talk about it. How awkward are you?" "Shut up. Gu Jinglian, I didn't expect you to love me so much." "Shut up." Outside the door, Uncle Fu happened to pass by and overheard their bickering. He couldn't help but laugh. Actually, The reason why he had asked the digitizer for this wedding photo that day was because of Gu Jinglian's instructions. That day, the wedding photo was printed on the spot. Gu Jinglian saw this photo and didn't say anything. He asked Uncle Fu to print out this photo and take it to the Gu family's tattoo artist for a design. Uncle Fu asked him what he wanted to do. Gu Jinglian only asked him to do as he was told, but did not say anything else. How could Uncle Fu not understand? He immediately understood. The old master wanted to tattoo his wife on his body. Gu Jinglian did not have many tattoos on his body, but this one covered his entire chest. There was no extra space. On the left side of his chest, in the center of his precordium. This was also the position of the heart, the most sacred position. He got a tattoo of her. What did this mean? Uncle Fu felt gratified when he saw this. This showed that old master really cared about Chu Ho. He was too happy. She was happier than anyone else. To be able to see his master's happiness while he was still alive. His greatest wish in this life could be considered to have been fulfilled. However, how could someone as arrogant as Gu Jinglian tell Chu Ho his intentions? It would be hard for him to say such embarrassing words for the rest of his life. No matter how Chu Ho asked, he couldn't get an answer. By chance, Xiaobao also discovered this tattoo. He recognized at a glance that it was a portrait of Chu Ho. He didn't say anything. He returned to his room and started to flip through his photo album. Finally, he found an especially cute photo. Xiaobao held the photo up and ran to Gu Jinglian. He gestured with the photo on his right chest. Gu Jinglian lifted his collar and asked unhappily, "What are you doing? Dad, look. How about you tattoo me here?" Xiaobao showed the photo to him as he poked his right chest. Get lost. Gu Jinglian didn't even think and threw him aside. Xiaobao felt indignant when he heard this. Chapter 3708. No reason. Xiaobao said angrily, "You only tattooed mommy, not me. Why?" Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. "Nothing. You're ugly." Whoosh. It was a blow to the heart. Xiaobao's glass heart was shattered into pieces. He held his heart and asked pitifully, "You said I'm ugly?" Xiaobao knelt on the floor, covering his mouth with his fist and acting like a resentful wife. "You said I'm ugly. Daddy is biased." Gu Jinglian was speechless. Was this guy an actor? Why was he so dramatic? He said coldly, "Gu Changza, you'd better know when to stop." Xiaobao burst into tears. "Daddy doesn't love me. Daddy doesn't love me. Daddy only tattooed mommy, not me. Daddy is so biased, so biased." Gu Jinglian wanted to kick him out of the door. He said, "Why are you acting like a resentful wife?" His acting skills were top-notch. Everyone knew that he was pretending. He cried for a long time, but there were no tears. Xiaobao asked anxiously, "Daddy, tell me the truth. Do you really think that your son is ugly?" Gu Jinglian hummed an acknowledgement. Baby Chu covered his face and ran away with a wah sound. He ran all the way to Chu Ho's room and complained to her pitifully. Chu Ho was confused when she heard that. But when she saw Xiaobao's funny look, she couldn't help but laugh. "Daddy is jealous that you're cute." "Humph. That must be it." Xiaobao crossed his arms and nodded solemnly. "Daddy must be jealous that I'm cute. That's why he said that. He's purposely making me angry." However, he said longingly, "But Xiaobao also wants Daddy to tattoo me. What's so good about it? It just feels." Xiaobao thought about it seriously. "It just feels special." Chu Ho teased him. "Then mommy will tattoo you on my heart. Okay?" "All right." Chu Ho wasn't just teasing him. So he took the photo in Xiaobao's hand and found a tattoo artist. He asked him to design a design. Uncle Fu found out about it and told Gu Jinglian about it. Gu Jinglian was furious. No tattoos allowed. That night, when Chu He had just entered the room, Gu Jinglian saw her sitting at the desk and said this out of the blue. Huh. For a moment, Chu Ho did not understand what he was trying to say. He was confused. "What do you mean by not allowed?" "What's not allowed?" "I heard that you want to tattoo Xiaobao's picture on your body." Chu Ho was suddenly enlightened. "Oh, you're talking about that?" She nodded. "I do have that thought. You are not allowed to." "Why?" This man was too domineering. Only the officials were allowed to set fires but not the common people. You already have a tattoo, so why can't I have one? Gu Jinglian frowned but did not say anything. But in reality, he didn't want Chu Ho to have anything that was not harmonious. What if he saw Xiao Bao's picture tattooed on her body when they were in bed? That would be a very scary feeling. He kept feeling as if a pair of eyes were staring at him. He was not interested anymore. Moreover, her skin was so fair and smooth. If he had a tattoo on her body, it would ruin her beauty. If I say no, then no. You're not allowed to get a tattoo. Chu Ho said. I promised Xiao Bao and the child, so I have to keep my word. Besides, you already have a tattoo, so it's not a big deal for me to get one. You can get one. Chapter 3709. Make the tattoo smaller. Tattoo it on your butt. Xiao Bao would be so angry that he would cry, wouldn't he? How could he do such a thing to his son? Chu Ho could totally imagine how pitiful Xiao Bao would be when he found out that his portrait was tattooed on his butt. Mom, I'm on your butt, and you're sitting on me every day. Sob, sob, sob. Xiao Bao feels so wronged. No way. Chu Ho immediately interrupted him. Gu Jinglian replied. Why not? You tattoo me on your chest and I tattoo Xiao Bao on my butt. Isn't the difference in treatment too big? Gu Jinglian sat down at the table and snorted coldly. Why should I tattoo him on your body? I won't allow it. You're so overbearing. You only know that I'm overbearing on the first day you met me. In Gu Jinglian's mind, he got the tattoo only because he liked that photo. Given his style of doing things, to him, having a portrait tattooed on his chest had a special meaning. Of course, he wouldn't agree to Xiao Bao's whim. Chu Ho was helpless. If Gu Jinglian didn't agree and he didn't say anything, the Gu family's tattoo artist wouldn't tattoo him. Thinking of this, he could only give up. When Chu Ho went back, Xiao Bao looked at her expectantly. However, she said helplessly, Your dad didn't allow it. Why? Your dad said that it's okay to tattoo it, but it has to be on your butt. Xiao Bao was speechless. He frowned and asked suspiciously. What? He said that if you want to tattoo it, it can only be on your butt. Xiao Bao clutched his chest. What? How can he be so heartless? Good boy. Chu Ho smiled and squatted down. She patted his head and said patiently, Actually, a tattoo is very painful. You don't want your mom to be in pain because of a tattoo, right? Xiao Bao listened and nodded, but he felt a little awkward in his heart. Actually, it wasn't a big deal if Chu Ho didn't get a tattoo. The problem was that Gu Jinglian actually said that he wanted to tattoo him on his butt. Bullshit. Boom. Charge. How infuriating. But in front of Chu Ho, she still had to maintain a smile. Xiao Bao clenched his fists, feeling indignant. He suddenly thought of something, and his eyes flashed as he chuckled. In the past few days, Xiao Bao had been well behaved. On this day of rest, Xiao Bao suddenly ran to Gu Jinglian's study in the evening. Gu Jinglian had just returned from the company. He dialed a number and explained some of the wedding procedures. After hanging up the phone, he looked up and saw Xiao Bao standing at the door of the room, wearing a bathrobe. However, the way he looked at him was a little malicious. Daddy! Gu Jinglian's eyebrows twitched. He did not know what this little guy was up to. What are you doing? I got a tattoo. Xiao Bao flipped his hair proudly and swayed his hips as he walked in front of him. He placed his little hands on the table, looking very pleased with himself. Gu Jinglian said, Oh, but did not seem to be moved. What does it have to do with me? Of course it has to do with you. Xiao Bao held his chest and pretended to put on a flattering expression. In order to express my deep love for Daddy, I drew Daddy's picture and tattooed it on my butt. Deep love? His picture? Tattooed on his butt? Gu Jinglian was speechless. What? How is it? Chapter 3710. Xiao Bao's eyebrows twitched. Look at how good I am to Dad. As he said this, he took half a step back and pulled his bathrobe open. He turned around and stuck out his back, revealing his round and bouncy little butt. Gu Jinglian followed his gaze and saw that there was really a tattoo of his portrait on his butt. You. Dad, if I make Dad angry in the future, you don't have to do it yourself. I'll just slap my own butt. As Baby Chu spoke, he slapped himself hard on the buttocks. As he slapped himself hard, his buttocks shook. On top of him, Gu Jinglian's face instantly turned red. At first glance, this slap seemed to have landed on his face. Gu Jinglian's face darkened at once. You'd better behave yourself. Dad, you're angry. Xiaobao smirked. Then I'll slap my own butt 10 times. As he spoke, he began to spank himself hard on the buttocks with a few pa-pa-pa sounds. However, this scene was too glaring to look at. It was as if all these slaps had landed on his face. Gu Jinglian suddenly got up and walked towards Xiaobao aggressively. Gu Chengzi. Xiaobao turned around and saw his expression. He immediately realized that Gu Jinglian was really angry. He didn't even have time to put on his bathrobe and ran out of the door in a panic. Wow! Murder! Gu Jinglian also quickly chased after him. In the long corridor, a few servants passed by and saw the naked little munchkin running down the long corridor like a madman. Running naked. Behind him, Gu Jinglian chased after him with big strides. Like a gust of wind, he lifted Xiaobao up in an instant. Wow! Shut up! Don't hit me! Bam bam! 2 unambiguous slaps. You like to hit your own butt so much? Gu Jinglian asked as he ravaged his hair. Then do you mind if I do it for you? Gu Jinglian didn't wait for Xiaobao to finish his sentence before he started spanking him. Xiaobao cried out in pain, his eyes brimming with tears. When Chu He returned to the room, she saw Gu Jinglian sitting elegantly on the sofa with his legs crossed and a cold expression on his face. Baby Chu, on the other hand, was kneeling on the sofa. More than half of his buttocks were swollen, and more than half of the painting on his buttocks had been knocked off. When Xiaobao took the photo and was about to get a tattoo, the tattoo artist who was holding the photo didn't dare to really inscribe it. After all, she was still a child, and her words carried no harm. If Old Master knew about this, he would definitely be in big trouble, right? Therefore, even though it was said to be tattooed, it was actually just a drawing that was imprinted on it. How would they dare to really tattoo it? Gu Jinglian could tell at a glance that this was only the first step of the tattoo process. After printing it and imprinting it on her butt, the next step was to move the needle. Once it was done, it was done. Xiaobao rubbed his eyes and sobbed. Gu Jinglian put on a shirt for him. He wore a pair of underwear, but his butt was still exposed. When he saw Chu Ho, he cried even harder. He reached out